Untuk kita semua, Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good day and welcome everyone to this international seminar jointly hosted by Asosiasi Ahli Pialang Asuransi and Reasuransi Indonesia, APARI, and the Singapore College of Insurance, SCI. Kami ucapkan terima kasih dan selamat datang kepada yang terhormat Bapak Bambang Suseno, Ketua Umum APARI, yang terhormat Dewan Kehormatan APARI, Dewan Penegak Kode Etik APARI, Dewan Pelaksana serta jajaran pengurus APARI. APARI members, all guests and all participants attending live here in AAUI MyPark Ballroom Jakarta and also online via Zoom platform. Perkenalkan, saya Rania Saleh yang akan memandu acara hari ini sampai dengan selesai nanti. Sekali lagi kami ucapkan selamat datang kepada seluruh hadirin dalam acara seminar internasional dengan tema ESG and Climate Risk in Relation to Insurance yang merupakan salah satu rangkaian dari Road to 30 Years Anniversary-nya APARI. Jadi tanggal 19 September ini APARI akan berulang tahun yang ke-30 tahun. Betul ya Pak Bambang ya? 30 tahun. Ya, tepuk tangannya untuk APARI. Dan akan melakukan anniversary di 30 tahun ini dengan berbagai macam rangkaian acara. Salah satunya ya seminar internasional ini. Selebihnya selain itu ada berupa seminar in-house training, lalu ada olahraga dan acara puncak. Acara puncaknya yang banyak happy-happy-nya ya Pak ya. Acara puncak nanti ada banyak sekali acara, salah satunya akan disatukan dengan wisuda akbar. Jadi seminar internasional ini salah satu rangkaian dari Road to 30 Years APARI. Oke, puji syukur kepada Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan yang Maha Esa, karena atas limpahan rahmat serta izinnya hari ini, pada hari Kamis 6 Juli 2023, kita dapat hadir di tempat ini dalam keadaan sehat dan walafiat. Bapak dan Ibu peserta seminar, mari kita mulai acara hari ini dengan memanjatkan doa. Dan saya mohon bantuannya kepada Bapak Abdul Rahman untuk dapat memimpin doa pada siang ini. Silakan waktu dan tempat Pak Abdul.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, puji syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala yang telah memberikan kita begitu banyak kenikmatan, terutama nikmat sehat ya. Pada hari ini kita bisa berkumpul untuk mengikuti kegiatan seminar internasional dari APARI. Doa ini dilakukan dalam prosesi agama Islam. Untuk yang beragama selain Islam, kami mohon berdoa menurut kepercayaannya masing-masing. Untuk yang beragama Islam, izinkan saya untuk memimpin doa pada kali ini. Sebelum kita berdoa, mari kita membaca Ummul Kitab surat Al-Fatihah. Kita tujukan kepada para pendiri APARI yang telah mendahului kita, para senior-senior kita, para pengurus APARI dan anggota APARI seluruhnya. Ala hajihi niyah wa ala kulli niyatin solehah. Al-Fatihah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Hamdan na'imin, hamdan syakirin, hamdan ni'amahu wa yukafiru majidah. Falakal hamdu ya Allah ya ma'bud. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Kulillahumma malikal mulki tu'ti mulka man tasya wa tanzi'u mulka mimman tasya wa tu'izzu man tasya wa tuzillu man tasya. Biyadikal khair innaka ala kulli syai'in qadir. Tulijul laila fin nahar wa tulijul nahara fil lail wa tukhrijul hayya minal mait wa tukhrijul maita minal hayy wa tarzuqu man tasya'u bi ghairi hisab. Allahumma ighfir lana dzunubana wa liwalidina warhamhum kama rabbawna shighara wa li jamil muslimin al muslimat wal mu'minin wal mu'minat al ahya'i minhum wal amwat innaka sami'un qaribun mujibud da'wat wa ya qadiyal hajat. Ya Allah ya Rahman ya Rahim, dengan mengucapkan puji syukur kehadirat-Mu ya Allah atas segala rahmat dan nikmat yang telah Engkau karuniakan kepada kami ya Allah, sehingga kami bisa hadir di sini dalam rangka menambah wawasan kami, menambah pengetahuan kami, menambah kapasitas kami. Untuk itu ya Allah, ya Rahman, ya Rahim, jadikanlah acara ini sebagai acara yang Engkau ridhoi, yang membawa barokah, rahmat, taufik, dan hidayah-Mu buat kami semua ya Allah. Ya Allah yang Maha Kuasa, segala rencana kami tidak dapat terlaksana kecuali atas izin dan kuasa Engkau ya Allah. Maka kami memohon petunjuk dan pertolongan-Mu ya Allah, agar acara kami berjalan dengan baik dan lancar. Ya Allah, ya Alim, bukakanlah pikiran kami, lenturkanlah lidah kami, berikanlah kami ide-ide yang baik dalam membangun kekuatan industri kami dan kekuatan ekonomi bangsa ini ya Allah. Ya Allah, ya Rabb, tunjukkanlah kepada kami bahwa yang benar itu benar dan berikanlah kepada kami kekuatan dan kemampuan untuk menjalankannya. Dan tunjukkanlah kepada kami bahwa yang salah itu salah ya Allah, dan berikanlah kepada kami kekuatan untuk meninggalkannya ya Allah. Ya Allah yang Maha Pengasih, satukanlah hati kami, padukanlah langkah kami, luaskanlah pengetahuan kami, dan segarkanlah pemahaman kami, agar kami dapat memetik hikmah yang terkandung di dalamnya. Jadikan kegiatan ini sebagai ladang amal bagi kami. Ya Allah yang Maha Pengampun, ampunilah dosa kami, dosa orang tua kami, dosa keluarga kami, dosa guru-guru kami, dosa para pemimpin kami, dan dosa orang-orang yang telah mendahului kami ya Allah. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, akhirnya kami hanya bisa berharap bahwa hanya Engkaulah yang mengabulkan setiap permohonan kami. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ridhaka wal jannah wa na'udzubika min sakhatika wan nar. Allahumma innaka afun karim, tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna ya karim. Subhan Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamun ala mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Atas doanya hari ini, mudah-mudahan doa kita semua diterima oleh Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Memasuki acara selanjutnya yaitu menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin yang ada di My Park Ballroom dimohon untuk berdiri dan bagi peserta online untuk mengambil posisi yang disesuaikan. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the Indonesia National Anthem.
Jangan
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu, disilakan duduk kembali. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Selanjutnya kami akan mengundang Bapak Bambang Suseno selaku Ketua Umum APARI untuk menyampaikan sambutan. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Mr. Bambang Suseno as Chairman of APARI to deliver his welcome address. Untuk waktu dan tempat kami persilahkan Pak, dan mari kita berikan tepuk tangan yang meriah untuk Bapak Bambang Suseno.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sehat, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Pagi. Baik Bapak Ibu sekalian, sedianya mau menyampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris. Ternyata narasumber kita walaupun orang Hong Kong tapi lama di Singapura, ya, 30 tahun di Singapura, tiap bulan datang ke Jakarta. Gitu. So you can speak bahasa ya Pak Raymond ya. Oke. Pertama dan yang utama Bapak Ibu sekalian, marilah kita bersama-sama mengucapkan rasa syukur kita pada hadirat Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Karena pada hari ini sekali lagi kita diberikan rahmahnya, nikmatnya untuk dapat berkumpul di AAUI Ballroom ini dalam keadaan sehat walafiat. Yang kami hormati Dewan Kehormatan APARI, Dewan Penegak Kode Etik APARI, pengurus APARI dan perangkat dari Dewan Pelaksana APARI. Yang kami hormati tentunya seluruh undangan yang hadir dalam acara hari ini. Silakan Pak Kocu. Dan juga tentunya kepada seluruh peserta seminar pada hari ini yang dilaksanakan secara hybrid, baik yang datang di ruangan maupun yang mengikuti melalui online. Jadi pertama kami ucapkan selamat datang, welcome to our seminar today. So tentunya kami mengucapkan warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Pak Raymond Chung, mewakili Singapore College of Insurance, dan moderator kita hari ini Pak Diki Natapraja. Jadi Bapak Ibu sekalian, acara seminar pada hari ini merupakan acara seminar atau event kolaborasi pertama antara APARI dengan Singapore College of Insurance. Jadi kedua organisasi ini memang sama-sama fokus pada insurance training and education. Jadi sudah selayaknya antara kedua negara sama-sama saling memberikan manfaat pada stakeholders masing-masing di kedua negara. Jadi mudah-mudahan di masa-masa mendatang akan ada acara-acara berikutnya dari kerjasama antara APARI dan SCI. Sebetulnya long journey juga karena rencana kerjasama APARI SCI ini sudah dimulai di 2011 ya Pak Riki ya. Pada waktu itu Pak Ian dan Pak Riki yang sempat berkunjung ke Singapura, ke SCI 2011 Pak Ian, sudah lama Pak. Waktu itu sama-sama mengkaji kira-kira area mana bisa dikerjasamakan antara APARI dan SCI, tapi baru bisa terlaksana pada hari ini. Jadi alhamdulillah sudah mulai ada kerjasama dan selanjutnya tentunya diharapkan lebih banyak lagi kerjasamanya. Nah, Bapak Ibu sekalian, pada hari ini topik yang diangkat, topik yang actual dan juga hot gitu ya, mengenai ESG. Jadi semua orang bicara mengenai ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance, atau mungkin disingkat governance saja. Sebagian dari kita sementara ini menganggap bahwa ESG itu adalah dunia yang lain. Kita di asuransi, SCI is another world. It's nice to know about ESG, but it's not needs to know about ESG. That's the current situation, Pak Raymond. Tapi di sini kita nanti akan sampaikan dari narasumber tentunya bahwa ESG ini adalah concern dari kita semua. Jadi kalau boleh mungkin sedikit menyampaikan bahwa ESG ini bagian dari emerging risk. Jadi emerging risk itu adalah risiko yang memang akan berdampak besar tapi belum terjadi sekarang. Dampaknya besar tapi belum sekarang ini. Jadi sebagian orang mungkin masih menganggap belum dipelajari gitu ya, atau belum diantisipasi. Tapi mungkin tidak di rekan-rekan kita di luar. Jadi sebagai informasi juga pada waktu bulan Mei kemarin kita mengadakan acara study tour di Lloyd's of London, kita mendapatkan pelatihan mengenai emerging risk. Jadi Lloyd's tentu sebagai lembaga salah satu yang terbesar di dunia, mereka perlu mengantisipasi sejak awal emerging risk ini sampai seberapa dampaknya dan apa kira-kira yang perlu dipersiapkan dari awal. Mereka sudah membentuk departemen tersendiri, mengundang, meng-hire expert-expert untuk duduk di departemen mereka dalam upaya untuk memberikan solusi manakala risikonya datang sudah siap solusinya. Nah, dalam kaitan dengan peran kita dalam hal ini adalah baik dari praktisi perasuransian maupun juga praktisi pialang asuransi, kita semua kan mempunyai pekerjaan, mempunyai profesi adalah untuk memberikan solusi bagi masyarakat. Jadi artinya kita semua perlu memahami mengenai ESG ini, sehingga pada gilirannya kita bisa memberikan solusi atau advice pada klien-klien kita, pada masyarakat kita. Jadi artinya kita perlu lebih awal mengetahui, agar pada gilirannya kita juga bisa memberikan advice dan memberikan value atau added value kepada klien kita mengenai bagaimana mengantisipasi risiko-risiko yang terkait dengan ESG yang akan menerpa korporasi dari klien kita. Jadi ESG sendiri kan sebetulnya memang suatu framework, ya, framework yang dipergunakan oleh perusahaan untuk mengevaluasi dampak dari bisnisnya itu apakah akan impact kepada lingkungan, kepada masyarakat, kepada praktik dari corporate governance. Pada gilirannya nanti kalau itu terjadi akan terjadi kerugian yang masif. Tentunya tidak dalam kapasitas saya untuk menyampaikan itu, nanti semua akan disampaikan oleh Pak Raymond ya, Pak Raymond Chung. Jadi kita semua pada hari ini akan belajar, bagi yang belum mengetahui kita akan belajar dari Pak Raymond mengenai ESG, dari mulai E to G, Pak ya, ESG, E to G from A to Z. Jadi mudah-mudahan pada hari ini kita semua dapat pencerahan, karena tampaknya hingga saat ini masih belum banyak ya topik mengenai kaitan ESG dengan insurance yang diangkat dalam suatu seminar di Indonesia sepanjang pengetahuan kami ya. Jadi mudah-mudahan ini menjadi awal yang baik bagi kita yang bergerak di bidang perasuransian untuk memahami ESG. Sekali lagi supaya kita juga bisa memberikan value kepada klien kita untuk menghindari risiko-risiko terhadap ESG. Saya kira mungkin itu ya awal yang ingin kami sampaikan. Jadi lebih jauh lagi nanti Pak Raymond akan sampaikan dan akan dipandu oleh Pak Riki. Jadi terima kasih Pak Raymond sudah hadir dan berkenan untuk memberikan insight kepada kita semua. Oh ya, terakhir mungkin last but not least menyampaikan juga tadi bahwa acara ini adalah bagian dari acara Road to 30th APARI Anniversary. Jadi kita akan 30 tahun di bulan September mendatang. Akan banyak event-event berikutnya, jadi mohon Bapak Ibu semua nanti bisa selalu berpartisipasi dalam kegiatan APARI. Ada international seminar dengan Lloyd's of London, Lloyd's of Asia ya, dengan para sindikatnya. Kemudian juga ada acara sports, ada acara, acara seminar dengan Anzif, partner kita juga. Kemudian acara wisuda akbar tentunya. Akan ada berapa ya? 500-an mungkin yang akan kita wisuda. Jadi salah satu prosesi wisuda yang terbesar yang akan kami laksanakan di bulan September nanti. Mudah-mudahan semuanya berjalan lancar dan semuanya didukung oleh Bapak Ibu sekalian. Saya kira mungkin itu ya Bapak Ibu sekalian, sambutan dari kami. Seperti biasa, mohon berkenan untuk mendengarkan pantun ya. Tapi jangan lupa bilang cakep ya. Paling enak makan durian tanpa biji. Kalau ada. Buahnya manis, padat berisi. Mari hari ini kita sama-sama belajar mengenai ESG untuk memajukan industri asuransi. Satu lagi Pak, boleh Pak ya? Buah durian harum baunya. Buah andalan dari Indonesia. Terima kasih atas dukungannya. Semoga acara hari ini berguna. Baik, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Pak Bambang atas sambutannya, atas pantunnya. Seperti disampaikan tadi rekan-rekan bahwa hari ini terselenggaranya acara internasional seminar ini adalah awal bekerja sama antara APARI dengan Singapore College of Insurance. Saya ingin menjelaskan sedikit, tapi nanti mungkin Bapak yang lebih menjelaskan mengenai SCI ini ya Pak ya. Jadi a brief information of Singapore College of Insurance. Established in 1974 as an industry-based professional training and education body. Its primary goals is to upgrade the technical expertise of insurance and financial services practitioners through practice-oriented programs, certification programs, and professional qualification. The SCI also administering regulatory examination for the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which include the Certificate in General Insurance or CGI, Capital Markets and Financial Advisory Service, and Health Insurance Examination. SCI is actively participate in regional initiatives and lead talent and skill building initiative under the Asian Insurance Council and Asian Insurance Education Committee umbrella. It has been recognized as the Asia Insurance Industry Educational Service Provider of the Year multiple times. And also the SCI has international link with professional bodies such as the Charter Insurance Institute, the American College of Financial Services, the Glasgow Caledonia University, and the Zurich University of Applied Sciences. Okay, now SCI has officially expanded the cooperation ya Pak ya into Indonesia with APARI through this seminar. Ya, untuk berikutnya, it is my pleasure untuk memanggil moderator kita hari ini Pak Riki Natapraja. Pak Riki Natapraja ini mempunyai experience lebih dari 25 tahun ya Pak ya di industri ini dan 20 tahun lebih ke financial. Pak Riki mempunyai experience 25 tahun di Asia Pacific region and 20 of those years has been in the financial services and insurance industry. Ada beberapa pengalamannya Pak Riki di sini adalah termasuk salah satunya Director of Aviation and Construction Risk PT Willis Indonesia, Vice President Strategy Business Development PT Holden Broker Indonesia, Country Manager Euler Hermes Indonesia, Director of Credit Insurance Asuransi Allianz Utama Indonesia, Marketing Director Asuransi Ramau Satria Wibawa, and he is currently the President Director of PT JB Boda Viva Indonesia Reinsurance Broker and also the Head of External Relations Department of APARI. Ya, Pak Riki sendiri sudah banyak pengalaman ya Pak ya di seminar internasional, SCI, note, moderator dan lainnya. Saya panggilkan Pak Riki Natapraja, silakan Pak, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Semangat pagi APARI. Semangat pagi semua yang sedang menyaksikan online. Semoga kita dalam keadaan sehat walafiat semua dan kedepannya kita akan menyaksikan topik yang lagi sangat menarik dan trending hari ini. Namun sebelum maju kepada pembicara utama kita hari ini, saya ingin menyampaikan sedikit tentang kenapa ESG ini sekarang menjadi trending topik. Tadi Pak Bambang sudah menyampaikan bahwa ada emerging risk atau risiko-risiko yang sudah mulai muncul, sudah mulai kelihatan terdeteksi, namun sampai saat ini belum bisa ditentukan, belum bisa diukur besar dampaknya dan masih istilahnya dalam tahap evaluasi dan masih dalam pemantauan oleh para ahli. Ya, mungkin bisa ditampilkan decknya. Ya, jadi sebelum kita bicara ESG, ada yang sering disebut juga sekarang di market emerging risk. Apa sih yang dimaksud dengan emerging risk ini? Menurut definisi Lloyd's, a risk which is yet to be fully understood that may have significant consequences for the insurance industry. Ini sudah didefinisikan oleh Lodge pada tahun 2017. 6 tahun yang lalu, Bapak Ibu. Bahasa Indonesianya ada di bawah tuh peraturannya. Nah, bersamaan dengan emerging risk ini sedang terjadi mega trend atau suatu tren yang sedang bermunculan secara bersamaan. Yaitu pertama, perubahan iklim, climate change. Beriringan dengan digital revolution atau revolusi digitalisasi yang kita sudah saksikan dengan banyak implementasi teknologi, dengan bermunculannya insurtech, dan proses-proses yang mengarah kepada otomasi. Belum lagi globalisasi usaha-usaha perusahaan-perusahaan yang akhirnya memperluas jaringan, tapi tentunya semua ini berdampak kepada lingkungan dan keseharian kita di sosial kehidupan kita. Terutama yang kita bicara tentang climate change ini yang sudah bisa dirasakan, dan kita akan bahas lebih lanjut setelah ini. Tapi perlu diketahui juga tentang karakteristik dari emerging risk itu. Mungkin sedikit menambahkan ilmu buat kita semua. Kalau kita lihat dari karakteristik dari emerging risk, bisa dilihat bahwa bukan resiko yang biasa. Terdiri dari kompleksitas, the complexity of the risk, kemudian uncertain, sudden, bisa tiba-tiba muncul seperti risiko yang biasanya kita ketahui, ambigu, ketidakjelasan, kurang jelas, masih abu-abu, kemudian apabila terjadi akan lebih chaotic, chaosnya lebih besar, dan kemudian kompleksitasnya. Belum lagi yang saya tadi lewatkan sengaja dan saya sebutkan sekarang adalah time horizon. Waktunya ini yang kita tidak bisa prediksikan. Kadang-kadang kita berasumsi emerging risk ini mungkin terjadi nanti 20 tahun, 30 tahun lagi, atau 10 tahun. Tapi ternyata tanpa diduga-duga udah tiba risikonya, sudah ada di depan kita. Seorang ekonomis, Rudiger Donsbush, mengatakan dan menyimpulkan tentang emerging risk sebagai berikut. Dan ini kami belajar waktu di London kemarin waktu study tour. Ya, jadi mungkin ini next London tour, Bapak Ibu bisa ikut karena banyak sekali yang bisa diambil ilmu dari orang-orang ahli di Lloyd's di London. Things take longer to happen than you think they will, and then they happen much faster than you thought they could. Ya. Hal-hal membutuhkan waktu lebih lama untuk terjadi daripada Anda perkirakan. Namun ada kemudian terjadi jauh lebih cepat daripada yang Anda kira. Itulah emerging risk. Setelah kita dapat ilmu itu waktu di London, kita mulai berpikir, saya pribadi, wow, ini memang sesuatu yang menarik. Karena seperti kita rasakan, mungkin 15 tahun yang lalu, kita tidak memperhatikan terlalu banyak tentang cuaca. Fine-fine aja, kita udah biasa hidup di daerah tropis, panas sudah biasa. Kelembaban humiditas sudah biasa. Tapi yang terjadi sekarang, Bapak Ibu perhatikan, kemarin aja, last week saya main golf di daerah Bogor. Biasanya itu jam setengah 9, jam 9 pagi itu masih adem. Masih ada angin, temperature pun suhu masih sekitar 20, 25 lah. Ini jam 9, kita udah merasa gerah. Kebetulan salah satu flight pemain ini cek di smartwatch. Pak, udah 31 derajat jam 9. Pantesan kita gerah dan kulit udah merasa terbakar, kuping udah mulai gak enak. Ini menandai sesuatu perubahan yang sangat dahsyat. Bahkan kalau Bapak Ibu melihat di berita, memantau cuaca di beberapa negara, terutama di wilayah Asia, sejak bulan April banyak sekali negara-negara yang dikenakan heat wave, gelombang panas yang luar biasa. Di antaranya Cina, Indonesia pun kena, Singapura, Thailand, dan juga Vietnam. Kalau Bapak Ibu lihat sekarang di layar, sampai beberapa negara tembus suhu udara 40 plus. Bahkan yang paling panas di Thailand 45 derajat Celcius di Bangkok. China selama seminggu terakhir di akhir bulan Juni, 21 sampai 30 Juni, 41 rata-rata setiap hari. Di Indonesia kita udah biasa, tapi kemarin 37 terjadi terekam oleh BMKG di Ciputat, Tangerang Selatan. Singapura juga merasakan suhu panas itu 37 di suburb Ang Mo Kio. Bahkan ada satu artikel di CNN News Asia sampai bertanya, kenapa Singapura sendiri jadi sepanas ini? Seorang expert dari World Meteorology Bureau mengatakan, coba lihat saja dengan perkembangan Singapura katanya. Banyak sekali gedung-gedung skyscraper yang sudah terbangun sehingga cahaya panas memantul reflectionnya dari kaca-kaca jendela gedung tinggi sehingga turun ke permukaan darat. Jadi ground surface temperature-nya di Singapura suhunya naik. Sekarang 37 derajat dirasakan pada bulan Mei kemarin. Jadi kalau kita lihat dari sisi wilayah di Asia, kita sudah merasakan panas ini. Dampaknya adalah akan menimbulkan resiko yang nanti akan dibicarakan oleh Pak Raymond. Dengan demikian, ketika krisis climate heat wave ini terus terjadi, akan sangat berbahaya menurut para ilmuwan, saintis, dan ahli meteorologi karena akan berdampak kepada macam-macam sektor industri. Kekeringan buat petani, risiko kebakaran hutan, bushfires yang bisa terjadi, ini pernah dialami di Australia. Bahkan waktu study tour ke Melbourne kita lihat tempat bekas dampaknya bushfires yang terjadi di Melbourne, sangat dahsyat sekali. Sehingga muncullah ESG. Dan apa itu ESG? It has been the buzzword across all major industries and businesses owners around the world as governments try to align and collaborate in an effort to increase the awareness of the impacts on the environment and social responsibility from our day-to-day business operations and social activities. Lantas tanggung jawab siapa ini? ESG ini? Pemerintahkah? Perusahaan? Atau para individu? Impactnya seberapa besar terhadap industri perasuransian dan kita semua sebagai para praktisi dan profesional dalam bisnis atau pelaksanaan bisnis di masa akan datang. Bahkan kita sudah lihat banyak yang go paperless, ya. Bahkan sekarang banyak perusahaan asuransi sudah melakukan nanam pohon untuk setiap polis yang diterbitkan sama dengan satu pohon. Nah itu udah program-program yang jalan, tapi apakah itu cukup? Dengan demikian saya akan memanggil narasumber kita yang ahli hari ini, Mr. Raymond Chung, onto the stage. Raymond has 20 plus years as an entrepreneur, fund manager, actuary, insurance risk, specialist with regional experience. He's the CEO of CER Consultancy to provide end-to-end advisory and training services for ESG projects in Asia. Managing Director of Alpha Consultant, providing professional trainings and consulting projects in Asia. He's the founder of Alpha Millennium Technology, providing digital solutions for micro-insurance and micro-lending in Southeast Asia. As you can see, his CV is phenomenal and well-experienced. So, without further ado, I'd like to call upon Mr. Raymond Chung. Let's give a round of applause. APARI, welcome to Raymond. Welcome, Raymond.
Thank you so much, Pak Wiki.
So, welcome back. Actually, it's not welcome because you're quite here often, right? That's as we discussed.
Yes, that's right. I'm in Jakarta, Indonesia, almost every month. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, you are now a local, hence the batik, right?
Yes.
So, ESG buzzword. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to present, your expertise, because I think going forward, a lot of these, amongst the audience here and online, directors of insurance companies, brokers, so I think the responsibility of us going forward is how to maintain sustainability for the industry and everything around us today. So the floor is yours. I hand over to you now. The
Thank you
remote.
so much, Pak
Tepuk
Wiki.
tangan buat
Yeah.
Pak Raymond.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, I will have to use English to speak for my presentation. I'm still learning Bahasa, and my team always tell me, I have a team of 15 people in Indonesia, and they always tell me that before I talk like one, before I behave like one, at least I act like one. By acting like one means that I need to wear a batik in important occasions so that I can at least act like I'm an Indonesian. But I'm still not. I need to learn the language. Yeah, so I would like to present this topic on ESG as what Pak Wiki said and also Pak Bambang. Thank you so much for inviting me to come here. It's a buzzword, but actually it has everything to do with every one of us actually. Do you know that, we are talking about how ESG is going to affect financial institutions, the whole industry, even insurance. But actually, before I even share that, I want to share that it has to do everything to do with our individual as well. Do you know that pollution is worldwide? And one of the major pollutions is in the ocean. And why is there so much pollution? Partly, in fact, partly it's because of this. You know what is this? Water bottles. And these water bottles is made of plastics. And there are so many used plastic water bottles being thrown into the sea, and it affects the whole ecosystem because the moment the plastic thrown into the sea, after a long time, they decompose into the sea. And who will eat up all these decomposed materials? The fishes, the crab, the prawns and all that, because they absorb some of these materials. And when these fishes absorb the materials, fishermen go and fish them, and next moment they are in the markets. And we buy the fishes from the market and we consume in our body. Do you know that scientists actually say that because of the worldwide pollution right now, the weekly consumption of all the fishes, even some of the waters that we drink, amount to a credit card. We are eating a plastic amount to a credit card every week. And that is the kind of things that are also affecting every one of us without knowing that we are actually consuming credit cards every week. And that is so scary. And so I want to talk about, I think Pak Vicky already introduced me, but I just want to highlight two things from here. One is that I'm currently running a fund. I'm actually part of portfolio manager of a fund management company. And part of it, I'm actually focusing on bringing some of the investors' money all over the world to invest in ESG projects through a venture capital company's structure in Singapore, VCC structure. So it's actually also related to ESG. Another thing that I'm doing as a Sir Consultancy, I only founded it this year. We are looking into a number of ESG projects in the region so that we can promote carbon credits and also we call it renewable energy credits, RECs, and we actually even link some of these carbon credit into a trading, meaning that next time if you can reduce the use of carbons and increase the use of renewable energy, you introduce credits, and from these credits you can actually go to the trading market and exchange for money. So ESG is not just about CSR. In fact, it's not just about risk management. It can potentially become a profit-making business, which I would also try to emphasize that is something that we should start looking into it. Okay? So, I have a long agenda. The reason is because as part of Singapore College of Insurance, I run this program of a 2-day program. And in fact, we are now trying to come up with a 3-day certification program on ESG. And we're going to expand into various areas that insurance company can do in the ESG. And I'm trying to shorten my 2-day program into 2 hours. So it's going to be tough, but I try my best, okay? I'm going to talk about what ESG is all about and why it matters to us. And then after that, talk about climate change and environmental risks as a consideration, because there are 3 parts to it. Environmental risk consideration, I will look at some of the case studies. And then I will go into social risk considerations, why social risk is all about and how it affects all of us as well. And governance risk consideration in corporate governance and some of the companies affected by corporate governance. And then most importantly, how can we look at ESG not as a risk, but also as an opportunity for insurance and for all of us as well. And of course, at the end of the 3-hour course, so appreciation of the ESG and understanding how climate change affect us, understand the three considerations, and then most importantly, how insurance company can turn ESG into opportunities. Okay, without further ado, let's begin. Okay, what is ESG? This is the broad definition of ESG. It's an evaluation of a firm's collective consciousness for social and environmental factors. It is a form of corporate social credit score that's been assigned to companies that they can turn it into intangible assets of the organization. So if you look at it that way, it is more than just CSR, more than just corporate social responsibility. It's actually an intangible assets of every companies. And in fact, governments, investors, and many of the organizations are pushing ahead of ESG, even think that ESG is going to be the future enterprise value of companies. In other words, if in future you value a company, you look at the way you do your ESG. That is how the importance of ESG are progressing. It becomes more and more important in the society. And of course, closely related to ESG is the term sustainability. How an enterprise can progress not just 1 year, not just 2 years, but in the long term, 10 years, 20 years down the road. And this is actually, in fact, this is something that we have seen it very closely to us because of COVID-19, that other than we cannot meet each other face to face in the last 3 years, COVID-19 has affected so many companies. And when the lockdown started in some of the countries in the world, many companies cannot even withstand for 3 months because they run out of cash. They have no business for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, they collapse. They cannot even sustain their business without any money flowing in for just 3 months. And so now we are talking about how to help companies to go much longer. And that's where sustainability comes from. And governments, investors are all pushing ESG as a way to help us on long-term sustainability. And there are, of course, we know that ESG has 3 components, so environmental, social, and governance. These 3 seemingly unrelated topics and put them together. So that's why, no wonder, it's so difficult to comprehend what is ESG, because there's so many things that we can talk about. So let me summarize. For environmental risks, we should talk about climate change, carbon emission, natural resources, pollution and waste management, and of course related to that with some of the changes that we need to understand about carbons, usage of carbon, solar energy, and then how to reduce some of the use of plastics, and all these things will come in under the environmental factors. For social factors, we talk about human capital, because actually human is the most valuable capital for any companies. How do we look into helping the organization to manage their workforce in terms of the work health and safety, privacy and data security, and also human rights. So all these are come under social factors. And for governance, corporate governance, basically how the companies with a proper framework to do business in a way that is able to meet the social needs and meeting customers' ethics, value, and meeting the needs of the regulatory requirements and all that. So we talk about corporate behavior, ethics, and also transparency. So let us look at some of the first thing on environmental risks. Make a guess, where is this picture taken? East Java. Yes, Pak Bambang is correct. It's actually Thailand. Thai flood. It's 2011 Thai flood. Happened to the land, Thailand in Bangkok, where the flood came in and it stayed there for almost 6 months. It's almost like a big swimming pool in Bangkok, and the water did not able to drain off. We actually say that Thai flood is one of the events that is considered as both physical as well as man-made, because first of all it's physical, right? It's the raining, it's a prolonged rainfall, but it's also man-made because of the drainage system was not good enough so that the water don't drain off and it keep within the Bangkok area, and some of the water level came up to this level. And with Thai floods, we used to think that there are 3 countries in ASEAN that are catastrophic free. But with this Thai flood, suddenly 1 country dropped. Do you know which 3 countries in Southeast Asia actually known as cat-free countries? Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. Yes, these 3 countries, but of course Thailand now no longer the case. Yeah. So that is Thai flood. Okay, let's look at second picture. Where was this taken? Australia, very good. Thank you, Pak Ricky. Yeah, it's Australia wildfire. It's only happened 3 years ago, 2020, in the midst of all the COVID-19, right? The wildfires keep burning, and in fact affected many regions within Australia itself. As you can look at the map itself, many places was covered by it. And the poor kangaroo has to find places to run to. And that is Australia wildfire. Okay, another picture, this one. Yeah, this one very, very obvious because of the signpost and all that. It's Japan. Japan happened in 2011, Tohoku, Japan earthquake. It started as an earthquake in the seabed that resulted in a large tsunami that hit the land of Tohoku. And then after that, it hit into some generators in Tohoku, resulting in leaking of radioactive substances, and it become toxic. So people actually have to vacate that land because of that. So again, it's a natural event that happened. Okay, summarizing all this, environmental risk arises from potential adverse impact of changes in the environment on economic activities and human well-being. We talk about natural hazards, but actually environmental issue also look into man-made hazards at the same time. Natural hazards are natural occurring physical phenomena causing either by rapid or slow onset events. Basically, it can affect atmosphere in the air, it can affect geologic in the land, hydraulic in the water, or origin from solar, global, regional, natural, or local skills. So some of these environmental risks include earthquake, tsunami, wildfire, floods, and all that, right? All these are part of natural hazards. Man-made hazards are the probability and consequences of unwanted accident because of deficiencies in waste management, waste transportation, waste treatment, and the way we disposal of this waste. We just throw into the water, or we just, maybe just put into a place, unwanted place, and just chuck away all these things, and resulted in pollutions, as well as loss of biodiversity, meaning that some of the animals become extinct because of the changes in the ecosystem. So, in fact, we started looking into this whole climate change like more than a decade ago. And at the time, we still used the word global warming. But actually, global warming is just half right when you talk about some of the global changes. Because of the changes in terms of the atmosphere or the man-made event plus the natural hazards, the whole Earth are almost gone into a haywire state. And what I mean by that is that some countries become hotter than usual, whereas some other countries become colder than usual. I think a few years ago, you actually say that Vietnam actually had snow. he's never had any snow before in their country, right? Certainly, like one of the year they have snow. And in Russia, the coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth. You know what is the coldest temperature ever recorded? It's in Russia, in the very north, right? It's minus 67 degree. Can you imagine minus 67 degree, minus 0 degree, and we're freezing, right? 67 degree. And in fact, if you just stand at the outside, and then within seconds, your whole face will become white. In fact, that was what happened, that some people died because they were trying to drive along the Russia during this bad weather, and the car stalled in the middle of the road. And these people, just about 100 meters away from the house, they came out of the car and tried to run towards the house, but halfway through they passed away because they just cannot stand the cold weather. And that is the problem. So some places are hotter, other places are colder. Some places are drier than usual, droughts, and other places are wetter than usual and become flooding. Right? In fact, Jakarta is one famous for flooding. So because of that, the whole climate has gone haywire. And that's why scientists subsequently changed the term from global warming to climate change, because it's not just about warming, it's also about the whole climate changing. Yeah. And what are some of the causes of global warming or climate change? There are a few factors. First of all is the greenhouse gases. And that is because many of the time, because of the industry, burning some of the fossil fuels, that some of these gases, they release it to the atmosphere, becoming a greenhouse effect because it trapped in the atmosphere, and then these gases turn into toxic gases. Aerosols are actually microscopic particles that are trapped and suspended in the air, and of course it becomes pollution. Yeah, in fact, we experience that all the time in Jakarta, Singapore, in KL, in Beijing, all the big cities, because there are many cars, right? Many cars, they produce carbon monoxide, put into the air and trap into the air, and eventually they form aerosols. Land surface changes, deforestation, because population increases over time, and because of that we need more and more land. And because of that, we chop away all the forests. And actually trees is good because they help to moderate the atmosphere. They absorb carbon monoxide and then release oxygens. But when we chop off all these trees, the sun will shine directly to the land and causing heating up of the land much faster than places without trees. So because of that, deforestation releases carbon dioxide. And after that, it traps into the air again, it forms pollution. And then, of course, the last one, solar and volcanic activities. Every time there's a volcanic eruption, it releases toxic gases, sulfur, and some of this carbon dioxide, and all these are released into the air, causing pollution as well. So, in fact, if you look at the graph, you see that from 1900 to 2000, it's just the last 100 years or so, the increase of the temperature is almost 1.5 degree and moving towards 2 degrees Celsius. One of the key reasons why we are moving into that direction is because of industrialization. You probably heard of the industrialization 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and now we are moving towards industrialization 4.0. From the beginning of invention of water and steam, all the way to now technology, and now go to AI, we are turning land from an agriculture-based industry into all kinds of manufacturing, engineering, oil and gas, mining. All of this industry are adding towards harming the environment. And because of this, burning of fossil fuels become a daily process. And that's why every day we are sending poisonous gas into the air, into the atmosphere. Okay, so that is you can see the curve, right? Looking at the last 100 years, the coal, oil, gas are all into the air right now, causing damage to the environment. Let's look at two case studies. First case study is a natural event, a natural hazard, 2004 in Indian Ocean tsunami. December 26, 2004, this tsunami was caused by an earthquake that happened in the South Indian Ocean. And this earthquake is so large that it releases energy almost equivalent to 23,000 Hiroshima type of atomic bomb. And the violent movement of that causes a huge tsunami, and this tsunami basically spread from Indian Ocean, the South Indian Ocean, all the way to east side, which is Phuket, Indonesia is Aceh, and then into some of the other parts of Indonesia. And then, of course, India themselves on the north side, India, Sri Lanka was hit badly. And some of these even go all the way to the west, to the African countries as well. And it's the largest magnitude earthquake in 40 years. From East Africa all the way to Thailand was affected by it. The Indian Ocean tsunami traveled as far as 3,000 miles. And it resulted in over more than 200,000 deaths and over 10 billion of property damages. In fact, this is the picture of how the Indian Ocean earthquake looks like. In fact, some scientists even say that because of this event, the seabed of the Indian Ocean has forever changed in such a way that some of this seabed, some of these tectonic plates are moving, and they are moving towards east side, which actually means that they are closer to us. The tectonic plates are moving towards Asia, and which means is that there could be even more earthquakes coming to Asia. And in fact, even for Singapore, the land that I stayed, we could have earthquake in Singapore as well. And that was scary. That is really scary because Singapore is a known cat zone, right? We are very safe there, but no longer the case. And in future, we might experience earthquakes. And I cannot just imagine how would that look like, right? It's going to be disaster. So, and what are some of the environmental impact? First of all, because of the huge shock that has been done to the earth bed, and then from there it flowed to the various land all over the place. It causes damages to everywhere the tsunami went to, like the mangroves, the coral reefs, forests, wetland vegetations, rock formations, and animals and biodiversity as well. And because of that, it also created tons and tons of waste and industrial chemicals, water pollutions, and all that. So all these are contaminated materials, and it affected the fisheries in all these countries. Life forms, houses were destroyed, people dying, people dead because of that. From an industry perspective, Phuket was the highest hit because of the hit into some of the very nice beaches where all the tourists were suntanning, and then suddenly, boom, that's it, finish. Cannot even find the crops. And of course, some other places like Aceh in Indonesia was badly hit. But many of them were poor, so they don't even have insurance. And it was really saddening to see many people die because of this, and without any coverage. So all this happened. Look at some of the pictures before and after. And so before was a picture below, and after is a picture above. You can see that the moment the tsunami comes, you cannot really recognize the land anymore. Okay, yeah, some of the places, the roads were destroyed, they have to rebuild, and the land, you know, some of these cars are everywhere, houses, the remains of all these bodies are everywhere. Yeah, and they took them 6 years to rebuild many of these nations, or these cities and provinces. Okay, so that's one example. Let's look at another example, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Okay, this is what happened. Okay, so look at a picture of the explosion that happened in the seabed westwards towards from USA, so somewhere near Mississippi and Mexico. Okay, what happened is that this platform was owned by the British Petroleum, and they basically have this platform put onto the seabed, and then they have a drill all the way down to dig out petroleum from those places of Mississippi. And what happened was that there was a huge methane gas built up over the drill. And because of that, this methane gas, the pressure was so great that this methane gas pool suddenly shot up to the surface, and this methane gas caught fire. And because of that, it causes the whole platform to caught fire and explode. Instantly, 11 people died. Instantly, because it was so hot and all over the place. And because of the explosion, it caused a leakage of oil. And in fact, in the first month, British Petroleum spilled 30 million gallons of oil into the Gulf Sea near Mississippi area. So maybe I give you the perspective what 30 million gallons. I actually have statistics. What is 30 million gallons of oil actually means? Do you know 1 gallon? 1 gallon is equivalent to 4.5 liter of liquid. So 4.5 liter of liquid. And one Olympic-sized swimming pool is about 50 meter long, 25 meter wide, and 2 meter deep Olympic-sized pool will require about 2.5 million liter of water. 2.5 million liter of water. So 184 million gallons of oil spilled is equivalent to 334 Olympic-sized swimming pool of oil pouring into the ocean. That is the kind of effect. So because of that, it caused a huge damage, right? The water, the fishery, and even causing environmental impact. And Gulf places were used to be a tourism attraction. Tourists should go there fishing, do sea sports and all that. But because of this whole oil that's been surrounded in that place, it's affected the whole tourist industry, causing 3.5 to 4.5 billion a year. And then look at this. Look at some of these pictures. It looks like, wow! It looks like this is the picture of the. Okay, I cannot do this. Look at this one. This is a very big ship in the midst of the what? It's almost like cappuccino here. Yeah, it's a big ship in the midst of the cappuccino. Do you know that the whole area covering these places is as large as 300 of Singapore, size of Singapore, and it's about half of Malaysia. Yeah, it's that's why the ship looks like a toy ship now in this big ocean. And environmental effects from it. Almost 10 million pounds of oil residue was removed between 2011 and 2013. So 2 years of cleaning up, 10 million pounds of oil was removed. But then the residue was still collected all over the place, all the way to the northern part of USA. And these oil disasters actually kill off fishes, prawns, all the sea lives, and then creating a very thick oil type of residue onto the sea, right? That cannot be removed totally. Look at some of the pictures. Pictures speak 1,000 words. So look at the fishes died because of the sea was black color. Is it? Oh, see, it's black color, and the fishes died here, and the fishes covered with mud. And then this is a few other pictures showing some of the sea lives dead because of that. In fact, even scientists say that this is a dolphin, a picture of a dolphin. Some scientists actually say that many of the dolphins' babies, right, were born deformed, even after many years later, because of these incidents. And it's really sad. So we talk about industrialization, but there's another effect of human doing that has caused the whole environmental factors, whole problems. That's called urbanization. In fact, urbanization is one of the most irreversible human impacts in the global biosphere. Look at this picture on the left side, the Manhattan in 1609 versus 2009. So it's 400 years of difference. The top picture shows Manhattan in 1609. Let's say, imagine if you have a huge earthquake that hit the place. Well, you kill off some bamboo trees lah, right? And then maybe destroy some trees. You just rebuild some trees. It's fine, right? Imagine the same earthquake hit Manhattan in 2009. It's going to be disaster because there's so many huge tall buildings, humans are all staying there, and the disaster will have a lot more effects, much worse effects than if they hit a few trees away. I mean, just killing a few trees is fine, but if you have big buildings, humans living there, it's going to be very, very different. And look at the different urbanization that happen in different parts of the world. New York, from fishery places, fishery type of places to, to all the way to become an urban city. Dubai, 1990, like, wow, almost nothing there, but now full of buildings. In Asia, KL, now with tall buildings and all that. Singapore as well. Singapore is claiming more and more land. And they claim more land. The reclaimed land also poses potential issue because imagine reclaimed land is less secure than if it's proper land, right? If the reclaimed land is not done properly, and then you place a building on top of it, it could collapse. It could cause subsidence, right? The building can just sink into the sand, and the moment that happened, right, the whole building is total loss. I remember last time when I was with AIG, we actually insured the whole land of Marina Bay Sands, and the whole land is actually reclaimed land, right? And you know, if you know Marina Bay Sands, those who know Singapore, there's 3 different buildings, and then on top of that, there's a ship-like like structure, right? I would jokingly tell my friend that maybe that ship will one day become effective if the building collapses, and then wow, we can sail on it. It was jokingly lah, but it's scary. Yeah. And some of the earthquake in Indonesia, actually, when we are working in the CBD area, we feel the shaking also. So at the time, I was very scared that it's going to be a total loss for us. But that's what happened. And guess where Singapore get all the sand from to reclaim the land? Malaysia, Indonesia? No. The country that they took most sand from is Cambodia. And because of that, they caused Cambodia to face environmental problems also because they are losing sand in those coastal areas. And now Cambodia facing environmental issue because they are losing sand. And Singapore is the one who caused it. Of course, in Jakarta, from the last 30 years, they sink below the land 6 cm. And in fact, we are almost like certain that this sinking will continue, and because of that, that's why we said we want to move the city to somewhere further away, right? Because Jakarta is a sinking city. Yeah, so that is another issue. So with all these environmental issues, the governments are coming together to say that we need to do something about it before it's going to be too late. So 197 countries came in 2015 to sign an agreement. They signed in Paris, so that's why I call it Paris Agreement, where these countries come together, shake hands, and say that we need to together, jointly, do something about the environment. So they want to commit to reducing the carbon gas emission to the air, and also together with all these countries create a framework so that they can basically introduce transparency in terms of the monitoring, reporting of countries' climate goals. And with that, they want to, jointly help one another to redirect some of this very environmental unfriendly industry towards greenhouse, the friendly, and jointly do something about the whole risk management of this climate risk itself. So because of this, why these countries are so concerned about that is because scientists say that without doing anything, we are moving towards 2.5 degree or even higher increase over time. And if by end of this century, means 2030, now it's 2021, what is now, which year now? End of this century, right? And now it's 2023, so by 2100, if we don't do anything about it, the temperature will increase more than 2.5 degree. And what is the risk of going 2.5 and above? If the Earth is moving towards 3 degree, the Arctic Sea entirely melts, and which means that the water will flow all the way to the south, which means that many countries will be flooded. Average drought in northern Africa lasts over 5 years, and then the average Mediterranean wildfire season will burn twice as large an area. So it's almost the Australian wildfire will happen more regularly. If the temperature goes beyond 3, go to 4 degree, hundreds and millions of people at risk of sea level rise. That means they almost have to build their house on sea, on water rather than on land. Over 1 million species at risk of climate-related extinction. So there is loss of biodiversity. Global food supply disruption, which means that the food shortage, and that will also, because of the high temperature, it will have more malaria diseases happening, affecting human life. Loss of biodiversity will mean that we have lack of food, and it will affect the whole chain. Earthquakes will become more regular event, flood will become more regular event, and because of that, you might even expect COVID-19 type of pandemic to occur every month. That means different type of pandemic will occur every month. And it's almost like the earth is going to be it become a hell, literally. And that's why the scientists say that we cannot let the earth go towards the direction. We need to do something about it. So we can still limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, but only be rapidly reducing the emission of carbon in all sectors. And we have to make sure that all countries are join hands together to do it. Otherwise, we were going to fail. So because of that, the Paris Agreement, they talk about emission will be half by 2030, net zero by 2050. It might be possible to bring down temperature if it exceeds 1.5 degrees, but this relies on everyone's efforts. So in order to move towards net zero, meaning that there's no carbon emission by 2050, we need to, first of all, mitigation. you have to reduce or prevent emission of greenhouse gases. And by mitigation, it's just to reduce, right? But we have to adapt to new way of doing things. For example, instead of drinking water bottle from plastic, maybe change into something that is not so environmental unfriendly, maybe the wooden cups and all that, right? Or glass bottle rather than using, plastic bottles, reduce use of plastic bags from supermarkets and all that. So all this can reduce climate change. Every single effect will have an effect in the environment. And of course, together with all the different countries, they can also come up with policies that can drive the lowering of the carbon emissions by introducing what we call that the penalties of carbon emissions, penalties, and introduce some of the policies to reduce some of the, let's say, coal mining industry and some of the oil and gas industry, put in regulations around them in the way they do disposal of waste management and all that. So all these things are collectively the policies that the government can do. And with that, it will enhance the mitigation and also adaptation of the different industries or countries to move towards net zero. The early we do together, the better it is, because the early we do, then we have a smooth transition towards 2050, which is on the left side of the curve. But if we delay our actions, by the time we want to do date of net zero, 2050, we will have a very deep curve to reach there, which is the red color curve on the right side. Actually, there's also one other curve. One other curve is that we will never reach there. We will never reach net zero. If the countries still doing what they are doing without changing towards some of these things that we talk about in Paris Agreement. Okay, so net zero, a target of completely negating the amount of greenhouse gases produced by human activities. Energy sectors is the source of about 3/4 of the greenhouse gas emission today. And because of that, we need to control the energy sectors. And insurance has a role to play because we insure some of these companies, right? So we have a role to play as well, together with the bank, financial institutions, and other areas of the ecosystem. Around 70% of all countries has pledged to achieve net zero emission by 2050. And with that, pledging is not enough. We need to do the actual work of reducing it and reverse the trend towards 2050. So how to do it? Basically, with the aim of annual rate of energy intensity improvement by 4% to 2030. As simple as turning your aircon to be 18 degree to move to 24 degree, 25 degree. You don't need so cold, right? I mean, sometimes I find that how come I go to all the shopping malls, it's so cold. Actually, if you just need to raise the temperature to around 25 degree, 24 degree, that actually also help to reduce the energy intensity. As simple as a task like that, everyone's effort to do it together. Electric vehicles to go from around 5% to more than 60% by 2030, so that you can reduce the release of carbon monoxide into the air if it's a petrol-driven cars. Although I had a discussion with Park Wiki earlier that actually electric vehicles have introducing another environmental problem because of the batteries. They are nickel-driven, and the moment the electric vehicles use to their end of lifetime, they have to dispose their batteries, which is going to be another problem causing to the environment. So it may not necessarily be better than petrol-driven cars. So, well, we just have to improvise as we go along with it. Okay, so that is the key milestone from 2020, where the different industries, the power industry, the industry, the building, the transport industry, to reduce the size, reduce the volume, and reduce the way they process waste management by 2050, so that we can move towards net zero. Very tall order to me. It's very hard to achieve. And in fact, I think we missed the milestones already. In fact, by this year, 2023, they're supposed to miss certain milestone. I think they have missed it. So they need to do extra efforts, all the different countries, in order to reach 2050. Okay, then UN, United Nations, come up with this thing called Sustainable Development Goals. And they are basically adopted by UN in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that 2030 all people will enjoy peace and prosperity. Sound like going to those beauty pageants and you ask them, what is your wish? Oh, world peace and all that. Sound like that. Huh? Well, I mean, it's good aspiration goal. And they come with 17 of such goals. I listed down here, from no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, all the way to number 17, partnership for the goals. So everyone partner together. It's a good initiative by UN, and in fact, all the countries that signed the Paris Agreement have tried to fulfill this SDG. This SDG is catered to all industry. So UN don't care whether it's your insurance or manufacturing or oil and gas or mining. We should do together to fulfill SDG. But we have one coming from IIS. IIS is International Association of Insurance Supervisors. They are almost like a surveillance of insurance regulators around the world. They come up with guidelines to help insurance regulators around the world to fulfill certain insurance framework. So IIS came out with SDGs specifically for insurance sector. And in their SDG, they talk about, of course, they talk about the COVID-19 that World Bank has estimated between 119 and 124 million of new poor in 2020. Because of COVID-19, you make millions of people getting poorer. They lost their jobs, they lost their income, and many of them, due to health problems, they cannot pay hospital bills and causing a lot of problems. So they are new poor since 2020. And insurance has a social mission to fulfill our mission to help to reduce some of this poverty and all that. So first of all, insurance as a risk protection mechanism. We have a role to play to reduce poverty, a role to play to reduce inequalities, and reduce hungry people, right? Zero hunger. Good health and well-being because of health insurance and all that to help people to manage health. Greater equality, decent work and economic growth, and of course infrastructure, companies that provide insurance for companies, SMEs, so that they can stir economic growth. And then, of course, insurance that will provide catastrophic insurance, they will able to help to cope with climate change, and also the partnership with government, with investors, with policyholders, with clients to make the world a better place. And insurance is also as an indirect and supporting role. Quality education, you can educate, we provide education to people, provide industry innovation and infrastructure. We are indirectly helping them. Why? Because we are insuring companies that do this kind of constructions. Without insurance, they will not have funding, or they will not have the assurance to build some of this infrastructure. Reduce inequalities, partnership for goals, and also sustainable cities and communities. So we have a role to play as insurance professionals. In fact, you look at the number of SDG here. They are about 13 out of 17. 13 out of 17 UN sustainability development goals can be fulfilled or have a role for insurance to play. And because of that, as insurance professionals, we should be very proud that we are actually helping the earth to be a better place. But the question is, are we doing it? Or are we doing it enough? Okay, so that is something that we need to examine also. Okay, after talking so much about environmental risks, why do environmental risks matter to us as an institution, as an industry? Okay, I borrowed some words from the MAS, the regulator, Mr. Ravi Menon, says that strengthening the financial sector's resilience to environmental risks, these risks are not trivial and could well threaten the stability of the financial system. And why is it that? Because frequent unpredictable climate events has caused disruption to resources availability, manufacturing capacity, supply chain disruption, and also business operation. And as insurer, we are actually providing assurance to all these sectors so that their operation will not run out, their supply chain will not be disrupted. Physical risks from climate risks, people, scientists and all that predicted that at a temperature rise of 2 degrees Celsius, 1.7 trillion of global financial assets could be written down in value by 2050. And in the same light, transition risk, basically what it means is that from us now to transiting into a net zero 2050, this is the transition, right? Because of the policy changes, because of technological advancements to help us to reach the goal, the shift in terms of consumer preferences, because now investors will be interested in the environmental friendly products. They, policyholders will want to work with companies that are environmental friendly, okay, green friendly. So because of that, there's a shift in preference from consumer perspective, from investor perspective, from even government perspective. So all these things that will affect the way they value different companies. It is estimated that up to 20 trillion of assets across the energy, industry, and building sectors globally will become stranded by 2050. Stranded means that they will have no support. There will be no banks willing to lend money to them, no insurance companies willing to provide cover for them, and they'll be on their own. In fact, government will impose taxation, impose penalties, and they will be stranded by 2050. So that is important. And most importantly, some company could be affected, and they can even go bankrupt because of environmental risks. So this is one case, Pacific Gas and Energy, PG&E is a US infrastructure company, energy infrastructure company. So they basically started, from 1950 all the way to now. They're providing energy, solar to the land of California and all that. In fact, 2/3 of the California households receive natural gas and electricity from PG&E. So they are doing good, right? But the problem is that they also cause a lot of environmental issues. So first of all, because of their infrastructure, they contaminate the ground of the California. From 1952 to 1966, they dumped roughly 370 million gallons of chromium-6 tainted wastewater. So basically, all this material contaminate all the water, and the California people are drawing the water, and they are drawing the polluted water. And because of that, the residents filed a successful lawsuit against them, and company paid $333 million to them. And by 2013, this company has cleaned up 54 acres, estimated to be, they will take another 40 years to clean up some of the damage they've done in the last 40 years. So you damage the place for 40 years, and now you need 40 years to clean them up. Another issue was wildfires, because their infrastructure is all open in the land, right, in the mountains and all that, with all the transmission lines and all these things. And because of wear and tear, because of the storm and all that, they frequently causing damages to all some of these transmission lines. And once they damage, they trigger fire. And you look at the number of fire, amazing, you know. So all the fire, in fact, I haven't summarized, in fact, I'm only summarizing the majority of them. So like, I summarized about 11 of them. All these fires has caused them to, you know, have lawsuits and lawsuits again and again. Look at that. This is one of the pictures taken from the wildfire. And this is California. It's like a evening site. No, it's not. It's not an evening site. It's actually a burning site. It's a burning across the whole land. It's amazing. And because of that, PG&E face potential liability of 30 billions from multiple wildfires. And they eventually say that they run out of money. And insurance company also not able to pay off some of these things, because some of these, they have to self-absorb. And because of that, they filed for bankruptcy in 2019. And because this bankruptcy involved multiple stakeholders, right? All the residents in California, there's government, there's also insurance companies and all that. There's multiple stakeholders. In fact, they say that this is one of the most complex lawsuits happened in US. PG&E eventually settled $1 billion in 2019 June and settled $11 billion with insurance carrier. And subsequently, they were built out by the government, because at the end of the day, they are state-owned, right? So they, in a way, the government has to do something about them. So they build them out in 2020. Otherwise, they will become one of the first, and not the only first, probably not the last company to go bankrupt. In fact, some people even put PG&E bankruptcy side by side with Lehman Brothers. You know, Lehman Brothers happened in 2007, 2008. They caused a huge financial tsunami. And the moment they bankrupt, it caused a 40% drop in investment markets, causing the whole world to went into almost instant recession. And PG&E was like, people compare them with Lehman Brothers bankruptcy. In fact, PG&E is one very good case study, because it actually shows us that infrastructure, this is like energy infrastructure, right? They provide energies and all that. They are susceptible to environmental impacts on a daily basis. So PG&E is just one of these companies, right? There are so many companies in the world that have infrastructure that provide energy, transmission lines, that they are in the open. And this PG&E actually shows that there are a lot of risks of this sector, the energy infrastructure sector, that many of them might, one by one, face some of these lawsuits. So it's one of the first of many to come. And some of the investors are predicting that some of these companies all over the world might face similar lawsuits in future. Okay. So we talk about environmental risk. In fact, the whole environmental risk alone, I can talk 2 days. So many things to talk about it. But let's shift a bit of gear to social risk considerations. Social factors are primarily concerned about those that will arise in the relation between a company and people or institutions outside of it. So we talk about human capital. Human capital talk about labor management, human capital development, employee welfare, and also workforce culture. Human rights, fair employment, diversity, equality, inclusive society, right? And this is becoming more and more important in some it started from US, but it is now shifting to Asia, that inclusiveness and also equality is very important. Data privacy, because of the increased use of online and all that, and employee data is also data, right? So there's cyber attacks, privacy breaches, event, cyber hygiene is now becoming very important. And of course, providing a safe workplace, healthy workplace, how the product, quality and safety, all these are also part of the social issues. Okay, for the purpose of today, I'm not going to cover every aspect. I only cover those areas in terms of the human capital, human rights, but there are also other things relating to social that we should look into. First case study is on H&M. H&M, as you know, is retail selling clothes, right? So they faces one of the largest fine due to data privacy. GDPR is a European law on data privacy. So they were fined €35.2 million for data protection and freedom of information for violating the data protection regulation of EU, European Union data protection law. Management of the H&M service center unauthorized monitoring their employees' data, including their social data, and using their social data as a way to measure performance, KPI, of these employees. And when employees found out that my Facebook data, my LinkedIn data has been used by my company to evaluate my performance, well, they basically complained and said, how can the company uses their own personal data to evaluate their own performance? And because of that, the investigation started, and some managers of H&M, those that users acquire the private data of these employees, eventually were laid off. And of course, the whole H&M was fined by the GDPR authority over 35 million euro. So this employee data, examples of how important data privacy is. Another example is discrimination. The act of discriminating means giving unequal treatment. And that can relate to the gender, the size, the age, the religion, ethnicity, ability, and also sexuality. And it can occur any point in the employment process, even right from the recruitment process, all the way to the employee left the organization. Generally, 4 different types of discrimination: racial discrimination due to skin color, ethnicity, and national origin; sex, gender discrimination, whether it's a female or male, then you are discriminated against; age, if you're older person and then they will lay off because of age, that's the example of discrimination. I think I run out of battery. Maybe tell me that I need to put after. Disability discrimination, if you even fair treatment towards people with physical disabilities as well. So one case happened in US, Uber, the Grab equivalent, the Gojek Grab equivalent in the US. They fired more than 20 employees after sexual harassment investigation. So Uber fired more than 20 people after the company investigated into sexual harassment, where they found out that there were one of the person called Susan Fowler. They lodged a complaint where she said that the boss told her that she need to rise up to her occasion. And in basically what he's trying to say is that she need to do beyond just work performance in order to be able to promote herself. I mean, I think in the implication that she need to go into some form of sexual relationship, things like that. And because of that, she lodged a complaint. And they also complain about unequal treatment, because there are Ubers are full of men, right? There are only about 20 females. And there was one time that Uber was issuing a Uber T-shirt, and they only ordered the male T-shirt, the male version. The female version, the cut is a bit different, but they said that they don't want to order the female version of the T-shirt because there are only 20 of you. Why should I just incur 20 of you? Just go and get from one of the male version. And these females went to complain, and they succeeded. So, and they call this is called discrimination. It's amazing. In US, everything also can happen. In Asia, people just close one eye, but in US, everything can happen. So that's why Uber went into it, and because of that, they went into public scrutiny, and in fact, they were fined by it. And they needed to fire some of these employees after that. Another case happened in Asia, AirAsia, and this only happened in 2021. What happened is that there was a town hall attended by over 500 staff. And in this town hall, of course, you see the Fernandez is there, right? The AirAsia founder. And then there's the Terapon, Tessapon. Tessapon is the chairman of the AirAsia Thailand. Was there on the left-hand side of the picture. So Tessapon, there was one staff asking questions after they present some of the strategy and all that. So the person on the top left asked a question. And because actually she didn't took a long time, she just asked a question, but Tessapon shouted at her and said that, what the F, the F word, what the F are you asking? You are taking too long time. You have to speak faster. And with this comment, this remark, because all these are recorded in the town hall, right? Some of the staff, don't know who, within 500, don't know who, which staff, post this episode into social media and say that, how can a AirAsia Thailand chairman make such a comment to a staff in a town hall, using F word and very impatient type of tone to that. And they even say that as a founder, the Fernandez below, how can he just smile away and never do anything about it? So they even shoot Fernandez for not doing anything about it. And because of this incident, and because it's in social media, people start commenting, right? And suddenly, boom, wow, hundreds, thousands of comments, and it goes viral. And once it goes viral, Tony Fernandez, July 28, he has to come and apologize. He said, apologize for the incident. This is not the culture we want in AirAsia, and what he did was wrong, and he apologized. It's interesting that only Tony Fernandez apologized. Tessapon never responded. He never responded. But this, again, gives us an idea that, wow, even things like that can happen if you hold some of this meeting and then you just scold somebody and then the video being circulated and the company is affected by it. And misconduct can be, besides happening within the company, it can also happen outside the company. In fact, sometimes by the conduct you carry yourself outside the company, you can face serious consequences, including dismissal. So another example that was shown in 2021, where you see the picture, the person wearing red color, he was wearing a Singapore T-shirt. And he was walking along Orchard Road in Singapore, and then he saw this gentleman. And this gentleman was with his girlfriend. And his girlfriend is a Chinese-looking guy, Chinese-looking girl, not guy, Chinese-looking girl. And he go and confront this guy and say that, why are you dating a Chinese girl? Because this guy is obviously not Chinese, he's Filipino or something like that, right? Obviously not Chinese, and he's dating a Chinese girl. And he actually said that you shouldn't discriminate your own race by dating a Chinese girl. It's unfounded, right? Unfounded comments, but the girl, while they are having conversation, the girl secretly go and take out the phone and recorded the conversation, and the conversation lasted for 10 minutes. He keeps saying that you should go back to your own race, and you should date your own race, you shouldn't date Chinese here, and da-da-da. And then, after that, they posted this video in the social media. And posted this in social media, they basically just say that something like that can happen. How come people discriminate us and say that I cannot date other races? That doesn't make sense, but I just put in social media, right? Again, it goes viral. People start commenting, how can Singapore, a multiracial society, somebody making such a comment? Is he trying to cause diversity? I mean, is he trying to cause some division in Singapore context? And the comment was so viral that two of the minister, Chan Chun Sing and another, the law minister, both ministers commented on this and say that Singapore has no place for such racist comments, and we need to stop such things so that we can continue to be united and things like that. Imagine even the minister came and speak about that. And because of that, subsequently, they found out who this person is, because the moment your picture is online, it's easy to find out who you are. And they found out that this guy is a professor, a lecturer in a polytechnic. And with that, the students of the polytechnic also come and say that, I disown this lecturer. How can this lecturer teaching us on this and then make such racist comments? Wow. It caused another round of stir, right, to the polytechnic students. And eventually the polytechnic has to come and say that they have already dismissed this lecturer. He's no longer the staff of this polytechnic. Wow, it's amazing. And the most amazing thing is that, first of all, he's wearing a Singapore t-shirt. Second is that this guy, he received a long service medal in 2019 by the Polytechnic. So he received that long service award and supposed to be good career path and then on his way up, right? And because of this comment that he made outside the workplace, not even inside the workplace, caused his dismissal and caused a big viral. We call this cancel culture. And cancel culture is now prevailing in the society because of the young generation promoting cancel culture. The moment they hear some negative comment, I will boycott this person, I will not support this actor, actress, and even people like that. And so that is issue that we need to starting to pay very close attention to. Okay, so that is social. Interestingly is that compared to environmental risk, there are a lot of data. But social and also governance, we have very, very little information, data to be able to provide risk management analysis and all that. So I think we are, as an industry, we are also starting to be aware of some of these issues, and now we need to start building our data, to do risk assessment, risk management, and provide some analysis on some of these issues. But let's move to the governance risk consideration. Corporate governance means the system by which companies are directed and controlled. So the role of corporate governance is to ensure the boards and the managers are accountable to basically, of course, they focus on the objectives, fulfill the objective of what the company want to do. But in doing so, they need to promote efficient use of their own resources, building investor confidence, make sure that their companies are compliant to the law and regulations, provide oversight of the business strategies, and also reduce exposure to corrupt practices. So all the board of directors and senior management have what we call a technical term, fiduciary duties in the company. And because of that, the governance issue are brought in. If you break down into sub-components, corporate governance can go into these 4 areas. System of internal procedures and controls that make up the management structure of the company, focusing on the balance of power between CEO and board of directors, make sure that there's no conflict of interest, for example. Best practices to split the roles of CEO and chairman. Why you cannot be both CEO and chairman at the same time? Any idea? Any thoughts? Because of conflict. And why the conflict happened is because the chairman of the board is supposed to drive the strategies, approve the strategy of the company, and the CEO is supposed to implement or execute the strategy. So imagine if you decide on the strategy, you approve the strategy, and then you yourself drive it. This is called own self, check own self. You are checking your own work, right? It doesn't make sense. It's conflict of interest. In fact, one of the reasons why Lehman Brothers went into trouble is because the chairman and CEO are the same person before it actually collapsed. So corporate governance, one of the key issues is to split the roles. Somebody approves strategy, somebody executes strategies, they need to be segregated. Second related part of governance is about corporate behavior. Relating to how you set your company culture, have a noticeable impact on company values, relates also to the representation of co-workers, decision making, and also the ability to participate in union. The idea is that you need to set the right culture in order to drive the business value forward. And that's why if the culture is very toxic in the company, you will not be able to ensure sustainability in the company. So because of that, it's important to look into corporate behavior. And closely related to corporate behavior is also about your business ethics. Because at the end of the day, what are you doing is to provide products and services to your clients. So because of that, you need to have transparency. You need to focus on providing the best value and purposes, and also the anti-competition. You basically don't try to, because you are the only company in the country to provide these services, so you charge very high fees. So you need to have that kind of practices that actually benefit your customers. So that is on business ethics. And then eventually transparency, disclose compensation, bonus payment, level of remuneration, and things like that. Why you need transparency? Because there's disparity between the customer and the company. The company always has more information about certain products and services than the customers. And customers cannot fight for themselves, right? The only thing is they can sue the company. But they have less information. So because of that, in the form of transparency, the companies need to provide more information. We call it disclosure. Disclosing their information like remuneration, like their assumption that they use, how they charge, how they arrive at the price to charge the customer, so that the customer now can make informed decisions. This is part of Fair Dealing. Fair Dealing Act. It started from UK, but now it's moving to Asia. That we need to be fair to customer, treating customer fairly, and that is part of transparency and disclosure requirements. So all these are under governance. Okay. Interestingly, I want to bring in Lehman Brothers collapse in 2008. They went through lawsuits because it collapsed. It affected many sectors, including investment firms, companies, SMEs, individuals, right? So because of that, they were facing a series of lawsuits. And subsequently, they came to some conclusion. And this conclusion is actually rather shocking, because they actually came to a conclusion that Lehman Brothers collapse is nothing to do with fraudulent actions. There's no individual doing fraudulent acts in the whole process. So there are no charges brought against Lehman Brothers nor top executive in terms of breaches, in terms of frauds, in terms of any wrongdoings. The only thing that they were lacking was surrounding the issue of corporate governance, management controls, and organizational culture. First of all, conflict of interest. CEO is also the chairman. Lack of board control, lack of oversight over the CEO, and resulting in inadequate check and balance. I come out with the idea, I execute it, and then the board just, yes, man, yes, 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 agree, without asking, questioning whether this decision is good. Failed to set and monitor the company's appetite for risk, strategies, and objectives, and because of that, they are chaining more and more risk exposure for themselves until once it go into light, become too late, they are not able to unwind the risk exposure that they created due to the subprime crisis. Aggressive business strategy. Mortgage securities portfolio made the company highly susceptible to adverse market conditions. Warning of the property market bubble were unheeded. So even though they know of some indicators that showing that some of these trends seem to be against us, but they say that it's okay, let's continue because we want to bring more business, we want to show more revenue. And they are so aggressive in pursuing the business strategies. And they over-leverage themselves. They over-borrow. They borrow money and then to invest, they over-borrowed. In fact, the leverage ratio was 26.2 to 1 to 30.7 to 1. And in fact, the leverage ratio recommended is 5 to 1. So they are highly leveraged. And because of that, they are unable to pay back the debtors, creditors as a result. Third is failure in risk management. Lack of oversight from the board, the risk committee, and of the risk management department. The risk committee department only meet 2 times a year. And they make up of people very old, about 60 to 70-year-old. They even have retired actress attending the board meeting. So because of that, the lack of oversight, they don't make decisions, and they can't even make financial decisions. Many of them are not trained in financial decisions. Unethical and aggressive accounting practices, and then the non-disclosure of Repo 105, removing 50 billion of assets from balance sheet. So some of these off-balance sheet item was not being disclosed. And because once it's off-balance sheet means that they are not counted for in the balance sheet. In insurance context, right, balance sheet is all the insurance products, all the investments, everything will be accounted for in the balance sheet. But if you have a product that are financial products, let's say credit default swap, like AIG case, in the past there's no classification for that, right? How do you classify credit default swap? Not a typical line of business. So because of that, companies will use off-balance sheet way. They won't account for it in the balance sheet. They come up with a new way, just account for the transactions. And because of that, when the auditor came and checked your accounts, they only check your balance sheet and the financial statements. And then eventually they certify you, because you look good, but they never realize that there are items that they actually never look at it. And so because of Lehman Brothers issues, now regulators all over the world doing inspection, they will ask you, do you have off-balance sheet item to declare? They will always ask you that. And you say, oh, yeah, I have some, then they will have to account for it within the balance sheet as well. So misuse of risk, over-reliance of risk models, so they over-rely on the value at risk measure. So all these things sum up to corporate governance issues, more than fraudulent issues that cause a collapse of the fourth largest investment bank in the world. And therefore, corporate governance become a very important topics for the regulators and us. There's one recent case. WeWork actually went into, they wanted to do IPO in NASDAQ a few years ago. But yet, at the moment you want to IPO, you need to, your book will be scrutinized, right? Because they will look into a financial book, looking into your internal control, conflict of interest. And eventually, the report shows that WeWork had lack of leadership, accountability, and oversight, as well as conflict of interest. And because of that, the critics say that it's due to a lack of basic internal controls within the organization. The CEO and the board does not provide good fiduciary duties within the firm, causing a lot of corporate governance flaws within the organization. And because of that, WeWork's board actually fired the co-founder and chairman, Adam Newman, out of the CEO seats. And of course, WeWork subsequently failed to be IPO, right? Because everyone keep on shooting them, right? So they cannot go IPO. And WeWork is part of SoftBank, part of SoftBank portfolio, right? SoftBank invested in many of the tech companies. And then people start questioning, oh, if WeWork is like that, how about the rest of the other SoftBank portfolio that includes Grab, includes Shopee? They are also questioning all these companies. They also have internal control issue. And then next is that they scrutinize even further. They say, WeWork, who are the company that value them, that they say that they are fit to IPO? And then they go to companies like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. They say these two companies go and value WeWork over $47 billion, even though with all these governance issues. Wow, this company is slipping, you know? And then they say that if they want to value not even 1/3, actually 1/3 of 47 billion is still a lot. To me, I think it should be even less. But the fact is that now, not just WeWork themselves facing scrutiny, you know, the companies that work with WeWork were scrutinized by people. People who value them, people like now JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are being scrutinized. Imagine, just imagine if you are the insurance provider for them. Maybe they will also scrutinize you. Wow, how come insurance providing such a company, how can we work with them with corporate governance issues? I think this insurance company also having problem. So some of these are connected now, and it's becoming very scary because any companies that we insured, any client that we insured, if they run into a public scrutiny, we might be implicated as a financial institutions. And that is what makes this governance such a sticky and complex issue that we need to start thinking about it. Yeah. Okay. Just time check. I think still okay. We are still not too bad. Okay. So with all this, I just talk about the three issues: governance issue, the social issue, the environmental issue. But more importantly, how can we see ESG not as a risk, but as an opportunity for us as an industry and as a company? So let's go through this. First of all, why ESG is important to insurers. Companies are changing their reporting practices, their structures, and they are including ESG as a benchmark. First of all, there's the ESG ratings. So companies are now being rated under the ESG lens to measure their resilience towards long-term sustainable and sustainability, and also looking into their whether they are care for the employees, social component, whether they are care for their the customers, the governance component, and also environment. And because of that, companies now focus on mitigating risk factors will cause significant reputational harm. And as insurer, that we provide some of this insurance like employee liabilities, the director and officers, D&O insurance, product liability, public liability, we now have a role to play to ensure that companies that look into ESG ratings, they also look into the insurance that actually provide some of this assurance of their long-term and sustainable type of infrastructure. Second is that ESG metrics in the investment decisions and risk management process and now can be used to assess companies' attitude towards sustainability. So ESG factors are now very tangible, and they will have financial implications to investors, to lenders, to business partners, suppliers, customer, employee rating agency, and regulators. Basically, almost every stakeholders that involved in the whole insurance environment. And because of that, it becomes more and more important that we need to consider. And sound ESG standards lowers the cost of capital because the bank will see you more favorably. Insurance company rating agency will see you more favorably. So because of that, you can lower your cost of capital, resulting in better operating performance. And moving forward, creating carbon credits or renewable energy credits can even trade it for money. You can even see ESG as a way to earn money for the companies. And that is what ESG is moving towards. And we need to adapt to a new way of doing business and new way of looking at ESG. Okay, but before I talk about opportunity, let's talk about some of the risks that we talked about earlier. First is that environmental risks focus on physical risks and transition risks. Physical risk is all about the natural hazard, man-made hazard that we talked about in the earlier session. Transition risk is risk that we are moving from carbon dependent in society to carbon net zero society. That is transition, and we call it transition risk. And if we are slow in the whole process, we will be implicated from it. And that's why we need to look into it. And both physical risk and transition risk will have an impact on the financial of the financial institutions, which insurer and our customers will have a role to play in this whole entire ecosystem. Okay, so and that impact will also lead to reputational impact. So everything are interconnected in somehow. Okay, so this is just a definition of physical risk and transition risk. And the impact can vary by geography, line of business, sector, customer, characteristics, and other factors. Okay, so from an insurance company perspective, what are some of the ESG risks that we are talking about? First, in terms of investment risks, the decline in valuation and increased volatility of the investment, example, carbon-intensive sectors, or companies with significant environmental degradation due to shift investor preferences. So if we have clients in that carbon-dependent industry, or we invest in some of these carbon-dependent industries, the value will go down, and value go down affect us. Opportunity costs for insurers that do not consider new investment opportunities, like some of the investment are moving towards green, right? Green bond, green loans, and equities. And then clients are also moving to green, right? Moving to some of the smart nation that uses solar and things like that. Are we moving towards the opportunity as well? If not, we will incur opportunity cost. Shifting investment portfolio to green may increase asset liability mismatching for long-term liabilities. Operational risks. Severe extreme weather event will disrupt business and because of that negatively impacting insurers, infrastructure systems, and operations. Offices that are located in net cat prone area might be damaged and not easily accessible after occurrence of the major cat events. Firms can also be attracting litigation if they do not conduct themselves appropriately in terms of expectation. So operational risks, especially if you operating in a nat cat area. Insurance risks, higher water, air temperature, and increase in carbon dioxide level will impact morbidity and mortality. So if you are in the life insurance sector, we also need to look into how some of these carbon dioxide, the wastage, the pollution in water and all that affecting the lifespan of your policyholders in terms of morbidity, in terms of mortality. More nat cat events can also increase mortality risks, resulting in higher claims than expected. And then insurers not supporting ESG might face reputational impact. And because of that, more policyholders might lapse. New policyholders may not want to work with you because they say that I'd rather work with a company that focuses on ESG. So there's also opportunity lost there. Liquidity risks. Difficulties in liquidating assets impacted by weather events or stranded in the transition towards environmental sustainable economy. So let's say you invest in some of these carbon-dependent industries and you try to offload it, you try to sell it, but nobody buy. And then run up become your paper value is zero because you cannot sell it off, you cannot offload it. Environmentally conscious investors might cut back on funding. If you are a company dependent on investor funding and the funding is cut back, you face liquidity issues. Increased litigation for insurers that breach ESG standards and may affect short-term cash flow and liquidity crunch. Maybe higher taxation, higher fine, and some of this may lead to litigation. And all in all, there's reputational risk that if like 100 insurers out there, 99 of them focus on ESG and you are the one that never focus on ESG, you face reputational impact because people say that, wow, I don't want to work with you anymore. I don't want to insure under your company anymore because you are not ESG focused. So that's reputational impact. And earlier on, I mentioned that insurance has a role to play to ensure sustainability, right? The IIS issue SDG, right? And with this, there's a term called sustainable insurance. So what is sustainable insurance? It is a strategic approach where all activities in the insurance value chain linked with all the stakeholders are forward-looking by identifying, assessing, managing, monitoring risks and opportunities relating to ESG impact. And insurance actually aims to reduce risk, develop innovative solutions so that we can cater to the need of ESG transition towards carbon zero and less dependent on carbon industry. Because at the end of the day, insurance is about understanding, managing, and carrying risks. With risks, we have opportunity. In fact, without risk, we have no business. We run our business without risk. So we should not see ESG as, oh no, there's a new risk and we don't know how to handle it. Our mindset should be that, okay, now with new risks, there's new opportunities. So we need to take on the new opportunities to develop new methods, new process, and new products to reach to these ESG goals. And insurance also helps to protect by providing prevention, reduction, and sharing risks. So we can also help some of these industry, like carbon-dependent industry, to share the risks with them and to reduce some of their risks by providing solutions to them. Changing ESG landscape is also leading to diverse, interconnected, complex risks and opportunities as well. So a resilient insurance industry should be far-sighted and focus on creating new products, looking at risk management processes to consider ESG into the equation. The future we want is a society where people are aligned and incentivized to adopt sustainable practices, and insurance has a role to play for that. Okay, United Nations Environment Programme Financial Initiative, UNEP, they came up with this principle for sustainable insurance indicator, so PSI. They basically launched in 2012, and with 4 areas to introduce sustainable insurance and urging the insurance industry to adapt this framework, sustainable insurance principles. And what are some of these principles? There are 4 things. First principle, we will embed in our decision-making ESG issues relevant to our insurance business. Number 2, we will work together with our clients and business partners to raise awareness of ESG issues, managing risks and develop solutions. Number 3, we will work together with governments, regulators, and other key stakeholders to promote widespread actions across society on ESG issues. And number 4, we will demonstrate accountability and transparency in regularly disclosing publicly our progress in implementing the principles. So let's look at a little bit detail on these 4 principles. Number 1 is on embedding decision-making ESG issues. 6 areas. First area is in terms of company strategy. First of all, establish company strategies. Identify, assess, manage, and monitor ESG issues in your organization. Dialogue with company owners, if possible, if you know who your insurance owner is. If not, at least understand the shareholders' perspective on the relevant ESG issues of your company strategies and integrating ESG issues into recruitment, training, employment, employee engagements, so that it's top-down. From top, it translates down the value to other parts of the organization on company strategy. Number 2, risk management and underwriting. To establish processes to identify and assess ESG issue inherent in the portfolio and beware of the potential ESG-related consequences of the company transactions. Integrate ESG issue into risk management, underwriting, capital adequacy, decision-making processes. So like metrics, research, analytic tools to drive ESG. Third, in terms of products and services development, develop products and services that will reduce the ESG risk, positive impact on the ESG issues. And then, of course, develop some program to support ESG. Next is on claim management. Respond to a client quickly, fairly, sensitively, and transparently at all times. Because you change your practices for underwriting, right, on products, your claims must also come in. For example, you exclude certain ESG risks. Make sure that your claims department assess risk with that exclusion in mind. So that's connected with the product that you launch. Your claims department must manage with the new mindset as well. And integrating ESG issues into the repairs, replacement, and claim services. Sales and marketing. How to educate the sales and marketing staff on ESG issues when they sell company insurance products to customers. Make sure that they bring the ESG element inside. And the coverage, the benefit, the costs are clearly explained and understood by the customer. Let's say if you charge a premium because you are in an ESG unfriendly industry, you charge a premium of it. Wow. Make sure the sales and marketing people are able to explain why you are charging 20% higher. It's almost like a smoker would charge higher, right, for health product. Well, now ESG dependent, the carbon dependent industry will hire premium. Make sure the sales and marketing people are able to explain also. Investment management. Integrate ESG issues into investment decision-making ownership practices. Okay. Number 2, we will work together with client and business partners. So number 2 is about business partner and clients. With clients and suppliers, you dialogue with them on managing ESG issues and then providing value why they should also implement ESG. So basically influence your client, influence your suppliers to move to ESG direction as well. Provide them with information and tools to help them manage ESG issues, integrating them into processes, and and then disclose ESG issues for reporting framework. For intermediaries like brokers, yourself, and agents and all that, promote the adoption of the principles, support inclusion of ESG issues into professional education, like what we are doing now, and ethical standards in the insurance industry. And in terms of government, support prudential policy, regulatory, legal framework, enable risk reduction, innovation, and better management. So work with the regulator like OJK to improve the policies to include ESG components inside. And then, of course, also dialogue with other intergovernmental bodies, maybe the environmental ministry, to jointly develop policies to help into ESG-related factors. And then dialogue with academia and scientific community to provide research so that we can get more and more data for environmental risks, social, and even governance risks. Number 4, demonstrate accountability and transparency in regularly disclosing publicly information. So assess, manage, and monitor the ESG issues and disclose the information accordingly. Participate in relevant disclosure and reporting framework, which the IIS and some of the international body actually provide some guidelines. Dialogue with clients, regulators, rating agency, and other stakeholders to provide value of disclosure. In short, we need to incorporate ESG into the existing enterprise risk management framework so that we can ensure there's a governance and strategy, and ensure that there is a board agenda. Okay, ESG is a board agenda in future, incorporating ESG into strategies, business planning, and product offering. Set clear roles and responsibilities. In terms of risk management, conduct risk assessment of customers, investments, enhance due diligence for some higher risk transactions, develop tools and metrics within the organization, improve the ESG risk profile, and shaping positive behavior. And disclosure, basically have a disclosure framework on ESG risks, looking at reference from the like TCFD, provide good guideline on that, and analyzing disclosure to improve clarity and relevance so that stakeholders like customers, investors, regulators understand our approach to ESG. Okay, after talking so much, summarizing this whole thing, right? Summarizing it. Is your company ESG resilient? As companies and as individuals, sometimes we equate ESG as simply CSR. CSR is corporate social responsibilities. And we sometimes say that, oh, every year we do CSR, right? We donate money, we go to away day, and then go to an old folks home and help them clean their house, feed the old folks. So we have done our part. So we are good with ESG. No. I think after we've gone through the last 1+ hours, you will realize that ESG is actually a new way of doing things. And it's going to be a new focus for the next sustainable number of years. It's not going to be just come and go. And because of that, we need to take on a new perspective and look at ESG as a business model. And companies became victims of climate change as direct physical risks. So we have the role as insurer to provide cover, to provide assurance to some of these companies. Other companies began to feel impact of diminishing investments as a result of transition to lower carbon economy due to the transition risks. And regulators are enacting new regulations and policy in responses to the climate change as well. So investors, customer, and supply chain partners are increasingly seeking out companies that will be able to thrive in the evolving environment. So how to build a sustainable ESG risk management focused company? Develop a deep understanding of ESG risks that can impact to your company. Develop holistic approach to tackle ESG risks so that it's become a board agenda in your board meetings. Apply risk management framework so that can identify, assess, monitor, and report ESG risk on a regular basis, develop risk assessment tools, both qualitatively and quantitatively, to measure the impact of some of these risks, integrating them and have a disclosure process, decision making, engaging the various stakeholders like regulators, customers, investors, and environmental experts on a regular basis. To embrace ESG risk culture in the organization. And eventually, how ESG add value to business. First of all, it provides a better business strategy, sustainable strategy over long run. It provides a good corporate governance framework to enable future activities to be carried out in a consistent manner. It protects the company's brand and reputation. It also optimizes your operational efficiency, reducing risk exposure due to ESG risks. Develop people and knowledge base so that your workforce are also well versed in terms of ESG, and people like to stay in a company that are forward looking. So you can attract talent, retain talent as a result. Make more efficient use of capital to deal with ESG risks and reflect that risk investment in your organization. Increasing chance of achieving your long-term sustainable objective of the organization, and also reducing the likelihood and severity of extreme ESG related events. So with that, I end my presentation, and I hope it gives you some idea and understanding of what ESG is all about, and hopefully we can work together to build an environmental friendly society in future. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause for Raymond Chung. Wow. Thank you, Raymond. Bapak Ibu, sebelum kita masuk ke Q&A, yang mungkin belum mencicipi coffee tea, silakan sales service di sebelah kiri saya. Sambil grab some water, mate, take a deep breath.
Sure.
Oke, mungkin tadi kita melihat presentasi dari Raymond Chung yang membahas dengan sangat detail, dengan elaborasinya cukup dalam terhadap aspek-aspek tentang environmental social governance. Sekarang waktunya, kesempatan buat Bapak dan Ibu yang hadir hari ini, yang menyaksikan sebenarnya, untuk menyampaikan pertanyaan-pertanyaan. Saya yakin pasti ada beberapa pertanyaan yang mungkin ada yang miss atau ingin minta klarifikasi ulang dari Raymond, boleh disampaikan. Nanti mungkin dari panitia ada rolling mic yang bisa disampaikan kepada audience. Boleh dalam bahasa Inggris, boleh dalam bahasa Indonesia. Nanti saya insya Allah akan bantu menerjemahkannya ke Raymond. So, mungkin sambil menunggu ada yang sudah siap pertanyaannya mungkin dari audience. Sambil menunggu saya akan I'll ask you a question, Raymond. In terms of ESG itself, if you break it up into environmental, social side, where would you see the most important priority would be on the environmental side or on the social aspect side of how businesses are supposed to run going forward in preparation for implementation of ESG governances and policies within the company?
Okay. On the environmental side, I think the focus is on how to reduce carbon footprint. And I think that is an area that they have major focused by many stakeholders currently. And in fact, this is an area that is constantly evolving as well, because many experts has come up with different indicators, parameters, measures, models to help organizations to quantify their carbon footprint. So to me, I feel that this is going to be an area of focus for the next, probably likely next 2 to 3 years. From there, we can potentially see a transition from carbon reduction focused society to potentially monetizing carbon credits type of framework that's evolving. And maybe even regulators and government will issue new guidelines and policies around the area also. I'm also looking to see potentially new policy coming from the regulator on that. Yeah, that's environment. Social, I think more in terms of the inclusion and diversity. That will be facing the most, I think partly because we are very Western-driven society. There's a lot of things that happen in the Europe, US. We are facing that transition. So some of the example that I showcase, right, discrimination, diversity and inclusion, and now with the latest, like for example, LGBT, the movement, we are coming to the insurance industry also. Do you know that, for example, in actuary, right, life insurance, we look at mortality tables, and mortality tables used to be male, female, and joint life. Joint life is always male and female together, right? Do you know that there's a development of mortality table in future is going to be male, female, male, female, male, male, female, female.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
they're going
new classifications of
Correct.
gender type, right?
Yes, all these are coming. So all these will affect how we look at risk exposure, how we introduce products, services to cater to the needs of this society. So I think inclusion and diversity seem to be the highest one on social consideration. One other example is that next time let's say if you conduct an interview, recruitment interview, and during the interview, let's say the person tell you that she's pregnant. Let's say a woman interview. She tell you you're pregnant. And if you doing the interview, you say that, oh, because you're pregnant, I cannot hire you into the company. That itself is discrimination, you know. And in US, there are cases where sitting inside the room and the employer commented that because you're pregnant, chance to hire is slim. They sue the company and they win. The person win. Some of these we may think it's like, wow, hard to think of, but it could potentially happen. And eventually, Asia society, more traditional view, but we might catch on some of these things. So now, you may even want to conduct interview where at least 2% against 1. If you have a male interviewing a female, please don't close the door. If the female say, wow, you've molested me, there's no way to prove, and you will run into trouble. So things like that are happening, and we need to be aware of some of these consequences. Yeah.
Thanks for that. You also mentioned in your presentation, it's an interesting thing, because if you go back a decade ago, companies were implementing enterprise risk management strategies, and it was always a cost, you know, and then eventually companies like public listed companies or state-owned companies had to put up a lot of money, capital invest in studying their organizations. So one of the biggest obstacles for any company these days is the amount of investment required to set up an ESG framework first, then the action plans and the people to implement it. So what would you say to an organization? Let's say you have amongst the audience members of board of directors here, whether brokers or even insurance companies. How do you view this and make it more a positive approach, so that not looking at it as a cost, but either as a future relief for potential disasters?
Thank you for the question. I think first of all, when you understand risk, risk itself is a neutral term. It does not mean that risk is always negative. So I think this is the first thing we need to understand, right? Risks that are negative is called downside risk. But risk can also be upside. Otherwise, why should we have insurance? Because we see the upside. That's why we insure risk, so they can translate into some form of monetization for us. So ERM, why is so different between ERM and simply risk management? Is that risk management focus on the downside. And that's why we always introduce a program, introduce task force to mitigate risk. But ERM focus on providing a holistic framework to manage risk so that we can balance the downside and the upside. And so, in fact, in my ERM trainings, I always tell people that ERM is about both sides, upside and downside. And if you bring on that lens to look at ESG, again, it is the same thing. when we look at ESG, like there seem to be a lot of things that's changing, and we need to mitigate this risk, mitigate that risk, environmental and all that, and then social governance. But if we can bring on the mindset that ESG is neutral, there are risks we need to mitigate, but there's also opportunity we can take on to make it into a business model for future. Then we will start seeing it from a different perspective. Then we will not seeing it, we are spending more money to meet another regulation, or we are trying to basically mitigate certain risks resulting from ESG, but we are now introducing a new business model so that we can come in to bring on the ESG. And if you think about it, is that currently ESG is still new. So there are a lot of evolving things. It's still not 100% sure what the direction is going to. But one thing for sure is that companies are already looking into, or companies and also government, investors and all these are also looking to ESG as a potential monetization tools. And like part of my consultancy and CER consultancy, we focus on ESG projects. And I just had a conversation with a trading company. They specialize into renewable energy credit tradings. And he was sharing that currently any project that's energy focused, solar focused, environmental focused, they want to take on some of these projects, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Pakistan, whether it's in Africa, they want to take on all these projects. Why? Because every of these projects, as long as there's renewable energy credits that they call it RECs, REC, RECs. RECs trading is now becoming a very positive area. He was saying that some country can trade up to 8 times. So imagine you trade in a exchange, you can convert into money and you can earn 8 times of the value. And now they are moving into some of these things. So we can see that on one hand we are providing the framework. We need to mitigate the risk. We need to understand where are some of these exposures. But on the other hand, we also need to know that we are moving towards monetization. And if it's always building something, but almost all start with foundation. And then from the foundation, we can go and monetize it. So we still have to go through the process. But have an end in mind, have a long term in mind to know that eventually if you start early, you can ride on that monetization faster than other people. So don't see it as a cost and building something as a cost, but seeing it as future benefits. And once you become that, you become one of the first to monetize the ESG benefits. Yeah.
Ya, mungkin saya terjemahan sedikit aja. Yang disampaikan oleh Raymond tadi adalah pada saat kita memulai menerapkan kebijakan atau merancang suatu kerangka framework untuk ESG ini harus dipandang dengan sudut pandang positif, bukan sebagai beban. Karena pada akhirnya tujuan untuk ESG ini adalah satu dari sisi lingkungan, akan ditujukan untuk mengurangi carbon footprint, emisi karbon, yang mana dengan semakin bersih atau green compliance-nya akan membuat sebuah perusahaan lebih menarik bagi investor. Karena apa? Akan menjadikan perusahaan ini sustainable, berkelanjutan dan bertahan di masa akan datang. Kemudian program-program yang sedang ada sekarang ini pada saat ESG diterapkan akan menjadikan suatu kesempatan untuk monetize, menjadikan carbon emisi ini atau carbon credit ini bisa diperdagangkan atau dijual belikan di market pasar dagang. Yang ini sudah dirancang ke depannya supaya company juga bisa leveraging dari penghematan emisi yang mereka bisa kurangi dan menjadikan sebuah driving factor buat perusahaan menjadi lebih profitable lagi. Karena kalau kita lihat waktu di awal-awal ERM juga menjadi sesuatu yang diwajibkan, semua melihatnya dari aspek negatif karena melihatnya resiko adalah sesuatu yang membahayakan. Padahal ada risiko positif, risiko negatif. Risiko positif ini menjadikan sesuatu yang peluang investasi, peluang untuk pengembangan perusahaan. Nah, ESG juga demikian. Namun sekarang karena dampaknya semakin luas dan besar seperti perubahan iklim dan sebagainya, ini yang harus disegerakan supaya perusahaan-perusahaan lebih aware dengan kepentingannya ESG. Semakin kita tunda, semakin kita nantikan atau ya masih prioritas lain lah kita tunda, makin berat bagi sebuah perusahaan untuk bergerak kepada arah ESG. So just with the translation. Mungkin dari audience ada yang mau bertanya? Silakan Pak Nadi, ada mic-nya dari panitia, Ferdi.
I guess one of my questions is around carbon zero. Indonesia is such a country which is so wealthy with commodities, and you know, we will be one of the biggest suppliers in the world for lithium for EV. But there is the other side of it. You know, there is the we do see that there is a big contraction on insurance for those kind of the mining, coal mining. And there's still such a big demand for all that type of minerals and activities. So as much as we try to drive to carbon zero, and I don't really believe in carbon zero, you can't have a world where there's no carbon. It's impossible. Even during COVID, when the world stopped for 2 weeks, we could see that the world was doing really great, but there's still a natural emission of carbon from the world. But I guess it's just that what's the challenge between what really is realistic about having a carbon zero, but there is still a demand and requirement around the whole world. We see with what's happening with Russia and Ukraine and what Europe is going through and what America is going through and what the demand of the world is. So how realistic really is carbon zero?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good question and good insight to know that carbon zero is almost impossible. I agree with you. In fact, I think it's a tall order to move to carbon zero. And in fact, I think carbon neutral will be still possible. Carbon zero will be hard. And what I mean by carbon neutral is that actually there are industries that on the outset they are environmental unfriendly. They are the base carbon dependent industry. But they can potentially generate carbon credits that offset their carbon type of emission. I give you one example: palm oil plantations. Palm oil plantation is a good example because they, in itself, we know that palm oil plantations, you have to clean the land and things like that. So waste management, so a lot of things that are posing problem to the environment. But palm oil actually generates methane gas, and methane gas eventually can generate electricity, and electricity can generate carbon credits. So in a sense that actually some of these environmental unfriendly industry can also be able to generate carbon credits somewhat, and you can potentially create a situation whereby you can have a net zero, means carbon neutral type of environment whereby yes, you are creating carbon emission, but you are also creating carbon credit at the same time. And if they can balance it out, then at least we are moving somewhere. So we are not just keep on damaging the environment and things like that. Another aspect that you pointed, I thought is very interesting, is that some of the industry like mining, they are currently undergoing a lot of stress because we talk about transition risk, right? It's supposed to transition until 2050, but they see the big impact in the last 2 years because the moment they announced that they're going to ESG focus, then suddenly the mining company, they realize that suddenly the bank don't want to lend me money, suddenly insurer don't want to insure me, suddenly they are stranded. They don't have a transition to 2050. They are stranded now, actually. And I personally feel that that shouldn't be the case, and you are pointed correctly that we still need this industry. There are still raw material that generate from it, and this company or these industries are still doing something for the society. So we need to balance that instead of straight away run into, we don't insure all these things and So we need to do education, and I feel that as an industry, we need to, we cannot embrace carbon emission, but we cannot suddenly stop everything. And this is an effort that we need to work with many different stakeholders to build on, interacting with some of these clients, coal mining and all this, interacting them to understand how they're going to transit to releasing less and less carbon over time. And then from there, in doing so, we still insure them, maybe with certain carbon premium, but otherwise, we should not stop 100%. And some of these things we should guide the client moving forward. Then together we move towards carbon neutral type of society. I think that should be the way to go.
I hope that's answered your question, Pak Nadi. Great. Okay. Feel free to ask, Pak.
Yeah, feel free to ask.
Feel free to ask if you've got some more. You've got another one? Have it. Please, go ahead.
I mean, it's interesting when you said about methane emission, but what we've seen in the world, in Holland and in Canada, with the farmers, protesting, because the government are restricting on methane emissions by their cows, to the point that they have to slaughter their cattle. So I'm just concerned that that kind of maybe extremism is going to impact other things like food bank, and food availability, and where is it all going? Where is it really going? I mean, I understand that there are aspects of ESG which are very important. But as you said, there's a downside and there's an upside to everything. So I think we have to be very mindful. Everybody has to be mindful of that balance. Even to the point about social media and equality and stuff like that. Because Indonesia is a majority, we keep saying it's a majority Muslim country. We have a certain attitude to the point that when the UK embassy put up a pride flag, we told them to take it down. That's not your country's flag. That's their, So there's some things that are realistic and some things that are not realistic. I just think, yeah, as you say, to get to that balance between that kind of thing.
I think just to add, I mean, I was visiting the markets, the insurance markets in Singapore, and trying to find capacity for some of our seeding clients in Indonesia, and the Lloyd's syndicates underwriters were all saying in almost one uniform voice, we are restricting underwriting any business related to coal and to metals, especially coal. We can only up to, if more than 30% of the revenue is from coal-generated business, they can't write. On the other side, we've seen in the industry where there's been a strategic alliances where some of the biggest reinsurance players signed an agreement to say no coal. But now some of these guys are pulling out of that agreement because they're losing a lot of revenue, right? Because they're not making premium, because their biggest portfolio was coal-related. So what Nadi said earlier was, it's to strike a balance on what's realistic and what makes sense and doesn't make sense going forward. And I think if we wanted to stop 100%, as you mentioned, it's going to be something that's going to be almost near impossible, because we're still heavily reliant on these fossil fuels. Even building the factories or producing steel, cement factories rely on coal for their furnaces to melt, heat the steel, to formwork the steel, and it leads high temperatures, and you only get that from coal. There is no other mineral in the world that can generate such heat to be able to melt metals at that high temperature. So, any other questions from the audience? Panitia, kita ada berapa waktu lagi?
Sampai jam 4 sih Pak, kalau di schedule Pak.
Oke, berapa menit lagi? Masih ada waktu?
Ini sudah lewat sih Pak, sedikit.
Oh, sudah lewat. Okay, we've actually gone over time. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up. I'll hand it back to the MC. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Raymond for his insights. I know we could talk all day on ESG, because we're at the beginning of the surface here now. So hopefully you'll keep coming back to Indonesia and maybe interact with our members of APARI going forward. Hopefully be here when we celebrate the 30th anniversary. And Bapak Ibu, jangan lupa mengikuti rangkaian acara APARI, follow APARI di APARI Publikasi di IG, Ya, nanti semua acara akan ada di situ semua sampai dengan puncak acara di September. Boleh juga follow saya nanti Riki Nata Project IG juga, nggak apa-apa. Gitu. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to pass on the mic back to the MC, to Ibu Rania, to follow up with the closing procedures. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I hope next time I can present in Bahasa. Thank you.
Ya Pak, terima kasih. Thank you to Pak Raymond dan Pak Riki. Thank you Pak. Untuk selanjutnya peserta boleh sambil menikmati coffee break. Apa mau coffee break apa langsung aja ya? Langsung, oke. Untuk selanjutnya adalah kami ingin minta bantuan kepada Ketua Panitia dulu, kepada Pak Roy Kosasi untuk dapat memberikan appreciation award untuk Pak Raymond ke depan. Silakan Pak Raymond, you have to go again. Ya, boleh tepuk tangan ya. Oke. Pak, I think you have to stay here because another award. Untuk kepada Pak Bambang sebagai Ketua Umum APARI untuk memberikan award appreciation untuk SCI Pak, yang mungkin bisa diwakilkan oleh Pak Raymond juga. Silakan Pak. Ya, tepuk tangan ya. Ya, terima kasih. Ya, tepuk tangannya untuk Pak Bambang dan Mr. Raymond. Thank you so much. Oke. Alhamdulillah rangkaian acara hari ini seminar internasional sudah selesai semua. Terima kasih banyak kepada para narasumber, Pak Raymond, kepada Pak moderator Pak Riki dan semua all partisipan hari ini yang telah mengikuti acara dari awal sampai dengan selesai. Semoga bisa memberikan manfaat. Oh, oke. Oh ya, minta untuk feedbacknya ya, untuk video survei bisa di scan barcode-nya untuk bisa memberikan nanti masukan dan lain-lain ya. Ini ya itunya. Kepada teman-teman peserta semua mohon nanti untuk bisa memberikan feedback atas seminar hari ini. Kalau memang ada pertanyaan tambahan atau tadi kan ada waktunya terbatas ya untuk tanya jawab, silakan nanti kami juga bisa membantu. Oke. Untuk selanjutnya adalah jangan lupa juga untuk mengikuti rangkaian acara 30 Days Road to APARI Anniversary. Per September nanti masih banyak lagi event-event dan rangkaian-rangkaian lainnya untuk podcast, acara olahraga, dan acara akbarnya yang nanti waktunya akan diinformasikan lebih lanjut. Saya mewakili dari panitia yang bertugas menyampaikan terima kasih dan mohon maaf atas segala kekurangan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.